Hello there, and welcome to the Reddit Slumber. If you're looking for a cozy place to unwind and let your mind wander, you've found it. We're back with another collection of stories to help you gently wind down. As always, if you enjoy our time together, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Pull the covers up, take a deep breath, and let's dive straight into the stories. Story 1.
My wife didn't marry me. She acquired me. Like a piece of furniture, you need to complete a room before the inspector shows up. I spent 10 years believing I was the luckiest man alive that we were. That rare couple who actually made it, only to discover every single day of our marriage was a transaction I never agreed to. She needed a respectable husband to unlock her father's dental clinic inheritance, and I was boring enough to qualify. Here's the thing though. Boring men pay attention. And when boring men finally snap, they don't yell, they plan. I'm a 38-year-old university professor. My wife is Lilac. Her affair partner is Richard, some fashion model she dated in high school. My best friend Elijah has been with me since childhood. And Lilac's father, Gerald, well, he's the man who built the cage his daughter eventually choked in. The background is simple. Lilac and I met through Gerald. He was a guest lecturer at a dental conference our university co-hosted, and I was the faculty liaison assigned to him. He liked me immediately. Called me the kind of young man who still irons his shirts. 2 months later, he invited me to dinner. Lilac was there, beautiful, composed, laughing at my jokes in a way that felt deliberate, but I mistook for genuine. We dated for 8 months, married within the year. Gerald signed over the clinic to her name 6 weeks after the wedding. I didn't connect those dots for a decade. Our life was structured and quiet. I taught literature at the university. She ran the clinic. We had James, then Max. We hosted Thanksgiving. We paid our mortgage early. I thought we were proof that patience and mutual respect could build something permanent. The first crack came on a Tuesday. Lilac walked through the front door at 1, 2, 4, 7 a.m. I know the exact time because I'd been grading papers and the clock on my desk had become a quiet accusation over the previous 2 hours. She came in smelling like something I didn't recognize. Not perfume. Alcohol. Specifically wine, the sharp, fruity kind that stains lips. Lilac doesn't drink. In 10 years, I had never seen her hold a glass of anything stronger than sparkling cider. Clinic ran late, she said, dropping her bag on the counter without looking at me. Emergency root canal. At midnight. The patient was in agony. I couldn't just leave. She kissed my forehead and went to shower. I sat there with my red pen hovering over a sophomore's essay about Hamlet's indecision and thought times. That's not how emergency dental appointments work. You refer them to the hospital. Asterisk. The next morning, I called the clinic. Her receptionist, a sweet woman named Patty, told me Lilac hadn't been in since 3 p.m. the previous day. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Boring men pay attention. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a scientist studying his own marriage. I noted her patterns. She started leaving earlier, returning later. She invented a parent-teacher conference for James that I confirmed never existed with a single email to his school. She claimed she was doing home visits for elderly patients, a service her clinic had never offered. Then came the phone call. It was a Thursday around 4 a.m. I'm a light sleeper. Always have been. I heard her whispering in the bathroom. The door cracked just enough for the sound to leak through. I know. But you don't understand what it's like here. It's so vanilla. He's so boring. He grades papers for fun, Richard. I need spice. I need times, you asterisk. My chest didn't tighten. It emptied. Like someone had reached inside my ribcage and scooped everything out with a spoon. I lay there staring at the ceiling, breathing through my nose, counting the seconds until she came back to bed and curled against me like I was a pillow she'd chosen for lumbar support. I called Elijah the next day. I need your help, I said. Name it. I think Lilac is cheating on me. Silence. Then, what do you need? That's Elijah. No theatrics. No times. Are you sure times? Just what do you need? I needed a lot. I needed her phone. I waited till she finally fell asleep and took it from the nightstand. She did have a password. I tried many things, birthdays, our anniversary, the boys' names, but it didn't open. There was one thing about her forgetful personality: she used to write passwords in her notebook. I took out the notebook from her purse, and there it was, scrawled in her looping handwriting between a grocery list and a reminder to order dental composite. The phone finally opened, and my hands were shivering from opening the text messages, but I had to. And there it was, the truth. I just sat there on the bathroom floor with the phone in my hand, scrolling down and seeing the sexting, nudes, and times I love you times messages she'd sent to this guy named Richard. That night I cried. I don't remember the last time I cried like this. I put my hand on my mouth to suppress my weeping, and I took a deep breath because I had less time and I needed proof. I immediately took screenshots of their chats and sent them to my email. Every photo. Every message. Every times I wish I'd married you instead. Asterisk. I returned the phone. She hadn't moved. Elijah lent me his car, a gray Honda nobody would notice. I parked across the street from the address I'd pulled from Richard's Instagram. A renovated townhouse in the Arts District. I sat there for 3 hours on a Saturday. Lilac said she was catching up on inventory. At 2:15 p.m., her white Audi pulled up. She stepped out carrying flowers. Asterisk. Flowers. Asterisk. She brought him flowers. Richard opened the door, tall jaw like a geometry problem, wearing a linen shirt unbuttoned to the sternum, and she fell into him like gravity had shifted. I photographed everything. But what finally broke the analytical distance, what turned my grief into something with teeth, was Max. Lilac was supposed to be watching the boys in the backyard. I was inside preparing lunch. I heard the scream before I heard the fall. Max had climbed the play structure and fallen from the top rung. His left arm bent at an angle that made my vision blur. I ran outside and found Lilac 15 feet away, phone pressed to her ear, her back turned to our screaming 5-year-old. She hadn't even heard him fall. At the hospital, while Max whimpered through his cast fitting, I checked Lilac's call log. The call she'd been on during his fall lasted 22 minutes. The contact name was saved as Clinic Supply Co. It was Richard's number. That night, after the boys were asleep and Lilac was crying in our bedroom about what a terrible mother she was, I sat beside her and said very quietly, "Tell me the truth about us. About why you married me." And she did. Through sobs, she told me everything. Gerald's ultimatum: marry someone respectable or lose the clinic. Richard was a struggling model back then, unemployed, unacceptable. I was the safe choice. The boring, dependable, father-approved choice. She said she tried to love me. She said she was sorry. She said Richard had gotten successful now that seeing him again had awakened something. I listened to every word. I nodded. I handed her tissues. And inside I began building something she would never see coming. Max's 6th birthday was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks is a long time when you're building a detonation. I planned Max's birthday party with the precision of a dissertation defense. Every detail curated, every guest list decision strategic. I told Lilac I wanted both families there. Max deserves a big one this year, I said. After the arm and everything. Let's make it special. She agreed, immediately relieved, probably interpreting my sudden enthusiasm as forgiveness. She even kissed me on the mouth that night, something she hadn't done in weeks, and I let her the way you let a dentist probe a cavity before extracting the tooth. I booked the backyard. Rented a bounce house. Ordered a dinosaur cake because Max was obsessed with velociraptors. I also made 2 trips to a print shop 40 minutes outside of town where nobody knew me and had 73 pages of screenshots printed on high-quality photo paper. The texts. The nudes, hers and his. The times I wish I'd married you instead. Asterisk, the 22-minute call log time-stamped against Max's emergency room admission. I organized them chronologically like a research paper and bound them in a clean manila envelope. Then I contacted my attorney. The divorce papers were drawn up, reviewed, and finalized in 11 days. I had them wrapped in silver paper with a white bow. 2 gifts. One for Gerald, one for Lilac. The party was on a Saturday. Sunny, 72 degrees. The kind of day that feels like it's mocking you. Gerald and Dorothy arrived early. Gerald shook my hand the way he always did, firm 2 pumps, eye contact, and told me I looked thin. Dorothy brought her lemon squares. Lilac's sister came with her husband. My parents drove in from upstate. Elijah was there, positioned near the drink table, the only person in attendance who knew what was inside the gift bag I'd placed on the present table between a wrapped Lego set and a stuffed Triceratops. Max ran around with his cast covered in dinosaur stickers. James followed him like a bodyguard, one hand hovering near his brother's back. My boys. My entire reason for breathing through the last 3 weeks without detonating early. Lilac was radiant. She wore a yellow sundress and laughed too loudly and refilled everyone's lemonade and played the role she'd been cast in 10 years ago. The devoted wife, the loving mother, the dutiful daughter who'd earned everything she had. I watched her hand Gerald a plate of cake and squeeze his shoulder, and I thought, times! You built this, both of you. And I'm the one who has to tear it down. Asterisk. We did presents after cake. Max ripped through them with one good arm while everyone cheered. When the pile dwindled, I stood up. There's one more, I said. Gerald, this one's actually for you. He looked surprised. Pleased. For me. It's not my time's birthday. Consider it overdue. I handed him the manila envelope. It was heavy. He noticed the weight, turned it over, glanced at me with a half smile. What is this, a novel? Something like that. He opened it. I've replayed what happened next from every angle. The way his reading glasses slid down his nose. The way his lips parted, then pressed together, then parted again. The way his hands, steady hands, surgeon's hands, began to tremble. He flipped 1 page. 2. 3. Then he stopped and looked up at Lilac, and his face had aged 10 years in 9 seconds. Daddy, Lilac said. She was still smiling. She hadn't seen. What is this? Gerald's voice was low, the frequency of something structural cracking. What's what? He turned the pages toward her. The smile didn't fade, it shattered. Like a plate hitting tile. She went white. Not pale. Asterisk, white, asterisk. The blood left her face so fast I thought she might faint. Gerald, I can explain. You can explain times. He stood up. His chair scraped backward across the patio. Dorothy grabbed his arm. He shook her off. You can explain times, this asterisk. Daddy, please, not here. Not here. You did this in my name. With my clinic. With the marriage I handed you. Gerald, Dorothy tried again. I gave you everything. His voice broke on the word. Not with anger. With something worse. Recognition. I gave you everything and you turned it into times, this asterisk. Lilac turned to me. Her eyes were wet, frantic, searching for something, mercy maybe. An exit? How could you do this at our son's times birthday asterisk? I reached under the table and handed her the silver-wrapped package. Open it. Her hands were shaking. She tore the paper. Saw the documents. Read the header. Asterisk. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Asterisk. You'll also find the custody terms, I said. My attorney recommends you read them carefully. She stared at the papers like they were written in a language she'd forgotten. Then she looked at Gerald. Then at Dorothy, who was crying silently into a napkin. Then at the guests, her sister frozen mid-bite, my parents holding each other's hands, Elijah watching from the drink table with his arms crossed. You're all just going to times let times him. Sign them, Gerald said. Quiet now. Emptied. Sign them, Lilac. And don't come to the clinic on Monday. The divorce finalized in 4 months. My attorney was thorough. The negligence during Max's injury documented with hospital records, and call logs made the custody arrangement straightforward. I got primary, she got weekends. Gerald transferred the clinic's ownership into a trust for James and Max. Lilac received nothing from it. The thing she'd married me to, secure gone, dissolved like sugar in water. I teach my classes. Marge watches the boys after school. James asks about his mother less often now, which worries me more than when he asks constantly. Max's arm healed clean. He still loves velociraptors. Some nights after grading papers, yes, for fun, I sit in the quiet of a house that used to feel like proof of something and now feels like evidence of something else entirely. I think about what Lilac said on that 4 a.m. phone call. Asterisk. He's so boring. Asterisk. And she was right. I am boring. I am methodical and predictable, and I iron my shirts. But boring men, pay attention. And boring men remember everything.
Story 2.
My family forgot I existed for 17 years. They didn't call when I had surgery. They didn't show up to a single birthday. But the moment they needed a free apartment, they tracked down my address in 3 days flat. So here's what happened. My biological mother abandoned me when I was 8, and I haven't heard from her side of the family since. Now her other daughter just got kicked out, and suddenly I'm getting bombarded by relatives I've never met demanding I open my door to a complete stranger. When I said no, they dropped her on my porch with a suitcase and tried to break into my house. I'm 25 female. My half-sister is Danielle, also 25. My biological mother is Renee. Her mother, the one orchestrating all of this, is Gloria. And my dad, the only one who actually raised me, is Keith. Let me give you the backstory so everything that comes next makes sense. Renee left when I was 8. Not left like she moved across town and sent birthday cards. Left like she packed a bag while I was at school, drove 6 hours south to be with Ray, the man she'd been seeing behind my dad's back and didn't look back. Keith came home to an empty closet and a note on the kitchen counter. I didn't even get a note. For a while, I thought she was coming back. Kids do that. I'd set a place for her at dinner. Keith never removed it. He just quietly ate across from an empty chair until I stopped setting it myself. That took about 4 months. What I didn't know until years later was that Renee was already pregnant when she left. Danielle was born 7 months after Renee walked out of my life, which means she was conceived while Renee was still living under our roof, still tucking me in at night, still pretending. The math on that betrayal hits different when you're old enough to do it. Ray wanted nothing to do with me, made that clear. Keith tried to maintain contact with Renee's side for my sake, not his, and was told in no uncertain terms that I was Keith's responsibility now. Gloria said that. Those exact words. Keith's responsibility. Like I was a bill that got reassigned. So Keith raised me. Alone. He worked doubles at the plant, coached my softball team on 3 hours of sleep, learned how to braid hair from YouTube tutorials before YouTube tutorials were even good. That man sat in a tiny plastic chair at every parent-teacher conference, every recital, every ER visit. When I was 14 and needed surgery, a pretty serious one, I was in the hospital for 5 days. Not a single person from Renee's side called. Not one. Gloria lived 6 hours away. Too far, apparently, to pick up a phone. I grew up. I healed. I got a degree, got a decent job, saved aggressively, and by 24 I'd closed on a small house about 15 minutes from Keith. He actually moved to be closer to me, bought the place next door when it went on the market. That's the kind of father he is. We had dinner together most weeknights. I had a life that was quiet and mine and hard-won, and I protected it like the precious thing it was. Then, 3 Tuesdays ago, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. Is this... A shaky breath. Is this my sister? My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I knew. Somehow, immediately, I knew. Who is this? It's Danielle. Please don't hang up. Mom kicked me out. Ray won't answer his phone. I have nowhere to go, and Grandma Gloria said, How did you get this number? Gloria gave it to me. She said you'd understand because Mom did the same thing to... Stop. My hand was shaking. Not from sadness. From something hotter. Danielle, I don't know you. I know, but we're sisters and... I just need... We're not sisters. We share a woman who abandoned both of us. That's not the same thing. She started crying. Hard. And I sat there in my kitchen with my fork halfway to my mouth, leftover pasta going cold, listening to a stranger sob, and I felt, I want to be honest here, I felt nothing. Not cruelty. Not satisfaction. Just a vast, flat nothing like staring at a lake with no wind. 17 years of silence will do that. I told her no. Clearly. Firmly. I said I was sorry for her situation, but I couldn't help. I hung up. Within the hour, my phone became a war zone. Numbers I'd never seen. Area codes from 6 hours south. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people whose names I'd never heard texting me paragraphs. Asterisk. Family helps family. You know what it's like to be thrown away. How can you do this to your own blood? Asterisk. Then Gloria called. You listen to me, she said, and her voice had that particular tone. Righteous weaponized the voice of someone who has never once been told no by anyone who mattered. That girl is your sister, and she needs help. God is watching what you do right now. If Danielle needs help so badly, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected, one of you should help her. I don't know her. I don't know any of you either. We're 6 hours away. We can't just... 6 hours is too far to visit when I had surgery. But not too far to try and force me to do something. Silence. I blocked Gloria. I blocked Danielle. I blocked every unknown number that came through. I told Keith everything. He listened, jaw tight, then said 5 words. Don't let him in, baby. I thought it was over. 4 days later, I pulled onto my street after work and my headlights swept across my front porch. Someone was sitting on my steps. A suitcase beside her. A familiar car, Gloria's car, pulling away from the curb taillights. Disappearing around the corner like a getaway vehicle. Danielle looked up and locked eyes with me through the windshield. My phone buzzed. Keith, from Next Door Times. Stay in the car. Do not get out. Call the police now. Asterisk. I called 911 with my engine still running and my doors locked. My hands were steady. That surprised me. The rest of me felt like it was vibrating at a frequency only dogs could hear, but my hands steady. Keith's porch light flicked on next door. I could see his silhouette in the window phone to his ear, watching. Danielle stood up from the steps. She walked toward my car. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't crack the door. I sat there with the dispatcher in my ear and watched this woman, this stranger wearing my mother's face, press her palm flat against my driver's side glass like we were in a prison visitation scene. "Please," she said, muffled through the window. "I just need a week." The dispatcher asked if I felt threatened. I said yes. Because I did. Not because Danielle looked dangerous. She looked exhausted, honestly. Mascara tracked down both cheeks, wearing a hoodie too thin for the weather, but because someone had given this person my address. Someone had driven 6 hours to deposit her on my porch like a package I never ordered. And the person who did it had already driven away. Police arrived in 11 minutes. 2 officers. Danielle immediately started talking fast, desperate, the kind of talking that trips over itself. "She's my sister. She said I could stay." "I have text," she said. "Ma'am?" The officer closest to me turned. "Is this your residence? Did you invite this person here?" "No." I told her no multiple times. "I have every message." "She's lying," Danielle's voice cracked. "She said I could come," she said. I unlocked my phone. Opened the thread before I'd blocked her number. Handed it to the officer. He scrolled. His partner looked over his shoulder. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Every message from me was a variation of no. Asterisk. No, I can't help you. No, please don't contact me again. No, I'm sorry, but no. Asterisk. Clear. Unambiguous. Documented. Danielle's messages, by contrast, read like someone negotiating with a wall. Increasingly frantic. Increasingly entitled. The last one sent after I'd already blocked her delivered, but unread times, Gloria said she'd drive me. We're coming tomorrow. I'll only need a week. Asterisk. Not a question. A statement. As though my consent was a formality she decided to skip. The officer handed my phone back. Ma'am, he said to Danielle, you need to leave this property. But I don't have anywhere to. That's not this homeowner's problem. You were told no. You're trespassing. They helped her collect her suitcase. She was crying again. I sat in my car and felt that same flat nothing from the phone call at Windless Lake, except now there was something underneath it. Something cold and structural, like finding a crack in your foundation. These people didn't hear me when I spoke. My words were not real to them. My no was a suggestion they felt entitled to override. Keith came outside once the cruiser left. He didn't say anything. Just opened my car door, waited for me to get out, and walked me inside. That night, I pulled up my security camera footage. What I saw made the crack in my foundation split wide open. Gloria's car had arrived 40 minutes before I got home. The footage showed her, not Danielle times, Gloria times, walking up to my front door first. She checked under the welcome mat. She lifted the ceramic pot by the railing. She ran her hand along the top of the door frame. She checked the mailbox. She tried the door handle. She walked around the side of my house and checked under a decorative rock by the garden hose. She was looking for a spare key. She was trying to get inside my home. When she didn't find one, she went back to the car, helped Danielle out with a suitcase, and drove away. Like a drop-off. Like a deployment. I filed for temporary restraining orders against both of them the next morning. Keith came with me. The clerk processing my paperwork didn't blink. She'd seen worse probably, but when I showed the footage of Gloria checking under mats and trying handles, she said quietly, you should also file a police report for attempted unlawful entry. So I did. Gloria and Danielle were found at a hotel 20 minutes from my house. Served that afternoon. The texts that came before service were unhinged. Gloria times. You will let that girl in, or I will come make you let her in. Asterisk Danielle. As though the police encounter never happened times. I'm coming for a week starting Thursday. Have the guest room ready. Asterisk. I wasn't staying at my house anymore. I was at Keith's in my old bedroom that he'd never converted, sleeping under a quilt he'd bought when I was 12. New cameras went up on both properties. Ring doorbell. Motion sensor lights. Keith started looking into security consultations. I started researching self-defense options. My quiet, hard-won life had become a fortress overnight because people who forgot I existed for 17 years suddenly remembered I had a spare bedroom. Here's what I keep coming back to. They didn't know my birthday. They didn't call when I was in the hospital at 14. They didn't send a card when I graduated. They didn't acknowledge my existence at any point during the 17 years. I might have needed them when I was a kid who set an extra plate at dinner for a mother who was never coming back. But they found my address in 4 days, my phone number in less. Organized a 6-hour caravan. Coordinated a family-wide pressure campaign. Tried to break into my home. I was never family to them. I was a contingency plan with a guest room. And now that I've refused to be useful, I'm selfish. I'm heartless. God is watching. You know what? Let him watch. He'll see a woman who said no and meant it. And he'll see exactly who refused to hear her.
Story 3.
My wife told me I was being manipulative for wanting her to care about our marriage. Turns out she'd been sleeping with someone else for 4 years and just assumed I was okay with it. So here's the situation. I spent years trying to save a marriage my wife had already walked away from. Every date night rejected, every vacation shut down, therapy flat out refused. I quietly prepared my exit, and when I finally confronted her, she didn't cry, she didn't apologize, she got offended. Then she dropped a confession that rewrote every single day of the last 4 years of my life. I'm 35, a dad who thought he was doing everything right. My wife is Laura, 37, the woman who let me raise our daughter Lily while she built a whole second life with her coworker Derek. And Lily, she's 5, the only person in this story who deserves better than what she got. The thing about a marriage dying is that it doesn't announce itself. There's no funeral. No one sends flowers. It just stops breathing one night and you keep performing CPR for years because you can't accept the silence. I need to go back to the beginning, or at least to the part where the beginning of the end became impossible to ignore. Lily was about 18 months old when I first felt it. That subtle shift. Laura stopped reaching for my hand in the car. It wasn't dramatic. She just stopped. Her hand would sit on her thigh, 6 inches from mine on the center console, and the distance felt like a canyon. I told myself it was exhaustion. New parents? Sleep deprivation? Hormones still recalibrating? I told myself a lot of things. By the time Lily turned 2, we hadn't been on a date in 5 months. I booked a sitter, my mom, who was thrilled and made reservations at the Italian place where I'd proposed. Laura came downstairs in sweatpants. I'm not really feeling it tonight, she said. Can we just stay in? We stayed in. She watched something on her phone in bed while I cleaned the kitchen. I told myself it was a phase. The anniversaries were the ones that cut deepest. Year 7, I bought concert tickets. She said she had a work thing. Year 8, I planned a weekend at a bed and breakfast upstate. She said Lily couldn't handle us being gone overnight, even though my mom had offered again. Year 9, and this is the one that lives in my chest like a splinter, I came home with flowers, a card, and a reservation confirmation. Laura looked at the flowers like I'd handed her a chore. You didn't have to do that, she said. Not times, thank you, asterisk. Not times, that's sweet, asterisk. Asterisk, you didn't have to do that. Asterisk, like my effort was an inconvenience. She now had to manage. I suggested therapy for the first time that spring. Casual, non-threatening. Hey, I've been reading about couples counseling and I think it could be good for us. Just a tune-up. Laura didn't even look up from her phone. There's nothing wrong with me. Not times there's nothing wrong with us, asterisk. With times me, asterisk. Like I was diagnosing her with something. Like the suggestion itself was an accusation. I tried again 4 months later. Different angle. I feel like we're disconnected. I miss you. I miss us. She sighed. Actually sighed. You're always so intense about everything. I stopped asking about therapy after the third attempt. The third time she told me that if I needed therapy so badly, I should go alone. So I did. Every other Wednesday for 8 months. My therapist was the first person who said the words out loud. It sounds like you're in a relationship with someone who's already left. I rejected that. Hard. Because Laura was still times there, asterisk. She still lived in our house. She still kissed Lily goodnight. She still put her coffee mug in the sink every morning. How could she have left if she was standing right in front of me? But presence isn't the same as participation. I know that now. The last year was the worst. I suggested a family vacation, nothing extravagant, a cabin near a lake. Lily would love it. Laura said she couldn't take time off work. I suggested a weekend bike ride, just the two of us, Saturday morning while Lily was at my mom's. Laura said she had errands. I suggested we cook dinner together on a Friday night. Laura ordered takeout before I got home. Every olive branch I extended, she snapped in half and handed back to me like I was the one being unreasonable for growing the tree. That's when something shifted inside me. Not anger, something quieter. Colder. Clarity. I started paying attention differently. Not to what Laura said, but to what she did. The phone always face down. The late nights at the office that started precisely when Lily turned 1. The gym membership she never seemed to sweat from. The new clothes that weren't for me. The way she'd shower the moment she walked through the door, even on days she claimed she'd just been at her desk. I didn't snoop. I didn't check her phone. I didn't need to. The architecture of her deception was visible to anyone willing to stop pretending the building wasn't on fire. I called a lawyer on a Tuesday. Quietly. Consultative. I learned about custody frameworks, asset division. What a document that says I'm allowed to travel with my daughter as the sole parent looks like. I scouted a condo 12 minutes from Lily's preschool. I opened a separate savings account. I built an entire exit in silence, mirroring the exact silence Laura had imposed on our marriage for years. She never noticed. Not the legal consultations, not the apartment viewings, not the financial separation happening in plain sight. She never noticed because she wasn't looking. She hadn't been looking at me in years. The Saturday it all detonated, Lily was at a play date across the street. Laura was on the couch scrolling her phone, and I stood in the kitchen doorway holding a manila envelope with enough paperwork inside to end a decade of marriage. My hands weren't shaking. That's the part that scared me. Laura, I said, we need to talk. She didn't look up. About what? About the fact that I'm done. Her thumb stopped scrolling. She looked at me. Really looked at me for what felt like the first time in 4 years. And what came out of her mouth next burned every memory I had to the ground. Done. She said it like I'd mispronounced a word. Like I'd made a grammatical error she was correcting. Done with times? What asterisk? I set the manila envelope on the counter. The sound it made against the granite was barely a whisper, but it detonated the room. With this. With us. With being married to someone who left 4 years ago but forgot to take her things. Laura stood up. Not fast, slow, deliberate the way someone stands when they're assembling their defense in real time. Her phone was still in her hand. She hadn't put it down. Even now, in the moment I was ending our marriage, she hadn't put the phone down. "You're being dramatic," she said. "This is what you do. You build things up in your head, and then I filed a consultation with a divorce attorney. I've secured a condo. I've separated our finances. There's a custody framework in that envelope that gives me weekdays and you weekends. I'm not building anything in my head, Laura. I've built it in the real world while you weren't watching." Something shifted behind her eyes. Not sadness, not guilt. Asterisk. Calculation. Asterisk. I watched her run the math, what this meant for her schedule, her image, her story. Not what it meant for us. There was no times us times in her equation. There hadn't been for years. "This is manipulative," she said. "You know that, right? Ambushing me with paperwork while our daughter is across the street. This is exactly the kind of controlling." "Don't." The word came out of me like a door slamming. She flinched. "Don't rewrite this. Don't make me the villain of a story you authored. I asked you to dinner. I asked you to therapy. I asked you to a cabin, a bike ride, a Friday night in our own kitchen. You said no to every single one. You said times, there's nothing wrong with me. Asterisk. So, either nothing was wrong and you just stopped loving me for sport, or something was very wrong and you chose to let me drown in it alone." Laura's jaw tightened. Her fingers went wide around the phone. And then she said the thing that incinerated every version of the past I'd been carrying. "I thought you knew." The kitchen went airless. New times, what asterisk? She exhaled, not a sigh this time, something heavier, something that had been sitting in her lungs for years. "About Derek. I thought you knew, and you were just staying for Lily." Derek. The name landed like a brick through glass. Derek from her office. Derek, who she'd mentioned casually at exactly the frequency required to seem transparent. Derek, who'd been at the company holiday party where Laura had laughed louder than I'd heard in years, and I'd told myself times, "She's just relaxed tonight. This is good." Asterisk. How long? Does it? How long? 4 years. 4 years. Lily was 1 when it started. I did the math instantly, involuntarily, every late night, every shower the second she walked through the door, every gym session with dry hair, every anniversary she couldn't be bothered to attend. 4 years of me raising our daughter, cleaning our kitchen, sleeping alone in our bed while she lived an entire parallel life. 6 inches from mine. "I felt invisible after Lily was born," she said, and her voice cracked in a way designed to sound like vulnerability. "My body changed. I didn't feel attractive. Derek made me feel... I bought you flowers on our anniversary, and you looked at me like I'd handed you a chore." My voice was flat. Surgical. "You didn't feel invisible. You felt times inconvenience, times by the man who was home every night with your daughter so you could go feel attractive somewhere else." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "I was your childcare, Laura. That's what I was. You kept the marriage alive because I was convenient." She started crying then. I watched the tears arrive and felt absolutely nothing. That absence of feeling was its own kind of grief, mourning not the woman in front of me, but the version of myself who would have crossed the room to hold her. I picked up the envelope, set it on the coffee table beside her phone. "Read it. Sign it. Or don't sign it, and let a judge decide." Either way, I'm done performing CPR on something you killed 4 years ago. I walked across the street to pick up Lily from her playdate. She ran to me with a crayon drawing of a purple house. "That's our house, Daddy," she said, and I held her so tight she giggled and said I was squishing her. The papers were filed Monday morning. Laura signed without contesting. She moved in with Derek 3 weeks later into an apartment that had apparently existed for over a year. A second home I'd been funding through a marriage I thought was struggling but salvageable. Custody settled exactly as I'd proposed. Weekdays with me, weekends with her. Lily handled the transition with the bewildering resilience that only 5-year-olds possess. Asking questions like, "Does Mommy's new house have a bathtub instead of the ones that would gut me later?" I started therapy for Lily immediately. Not because she was broken, but because I refused to let the shrapnel travel silently through her, the way it had traveled through me. I found a child psychologist who used play therapy, and Lily called her the lady with the sand table, which felt about right. As for me, I am going to work on myself and my relationship with my daughter, starting with a vacation. I am going to surprise her with a trip to Disney this winter. It will be expensive, but I really want to make her happy and create some happy memories. I am going to miss her on weekends. Maybe one day I'll explain this all to her when she's at an appropriate age and we can talk about it more. In the meantime, I am going to work on myself and try to be the best version of me that I can. I don't know what the future holds, but I guess I'll know eventually. My lawyer had me draw up a document that says, I am allowed to travel with my daughter as the sole parent for up to 2 weeks. Smart advice I wouldn't have thought of on my own. The kind of practical detail that reminds you the world keeps requiring paperwork even when your chest is caving in. The condo is 12 minutes from Lily's school. I hung her purple house drawing on the refrigerator the first night. It's crooked. I haven't straightened it. Some things you leave exactly as they are.
Story 4.
She threw hot coffee in my face. And honestly, that's the moment I finally understood my marriage was over. Not the hotel receipts, not the cab rides to his apartment, not even finding his name saved in her phone with a little flower emoji next to it. It took third-degree burns to wake me up. But before we get to the coffee, let me back up. My wife filed for divorce behind my back, slapped me with a restraining order based on lies, kicked me out of my own house, and the whole time she was sleeping with the father of our son's best friend, a guy I used to grab drinks with. And I still want to work it out, I know. So here's the cast. I'm a 41-year-old man who spent way too long confusing patience with paralysis. My wife is Elif, 38. Her boyfriend is Tarek, about 40, also known as my kid's best friend's dad. His ex-wife is Selim, who saw this coming before any of us. My brother Murat kept me sane. And Elif's father Hassan, her mother Nerman, and her brother Sem all play roles you won't see coming. The cracks didn't start with Tarek. They started with silence. Elif and I had been married for 9 years, and for the last 3 of those we lived like roommates who happened to share a child. She'd spend summers at her parents' place in her hometown, taking our son with her. I'd stay behind working, sending money, telling myself this was just what Turkish families did. Extended visits, cultural norms, nothing to worry about. I worried anyway. The money was its own kind of rot. Our whole relationship, I'd been the one carrying us financially. Elif didn't work, her choice, which I supported, but the spending never matched the earning. Credit cards. Loans for things I'd find out about months later. Secret keeping over money became so routine, I stopped calling it secret keeping. I just called it marriage. Then in early 2023, without a single conversation, without even a raised voice the night before I got served, divorce petition, filed in her name, and stapled behind it a restraining order claiming I was violent, that I'd threatened her, that our son wasn't safe around me. Every word fabricated. Every word devastating. Because in Turkey, a protection order means you're out. That day. No argument, no hearing first. You just leave your own home with whatever you can carry in a gym bag. I called Murat from a hotel parking lot sitting in my car with the engine off, reading the petition over and over like the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Don't react, Murat said. Don't call her. Don't text her. Document everything. Every single thing. So I did. I became a man made of spreadsheets. I tracked every financial transaction, screenshotted every message she sent, and she sent plenty. Daily texts telling me I was worthless, that I'd never see my son again, that her lawyer would bury me. I cataloged them all with timestamps, filed them in folders on my laptop like a man building a case. But I wasn't building a case. Not really. I was building a bridge back to her. Every piece of evidence I gathered, I told myself it was leverage to Times, fix things asterisk. To sit her down and say, Times, look, I know what's happening now, let's stop this and be a family again. Asterisk. Murat saw it. You're collecting proof she's destroying you and using it to convince yourself she still loves you. I didn't answer him. Because he was right. 3 months into the separation, I was at my apartment, a rental I could barely afford, while still paying the mortgage on the house I wasn't allowed to enter, and I noticed something on my son's tablet. We shared a family location app. I hadn't checked it in weeks, but that night I opened it and saw the tablet pinging from an address I didn't recognize. Not Elif's parents' house. Not our home. An apartment complex on the other side of the city? I drove there. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I expected to feel nothing. Maybe I expected to turn around. I found them at a restaurant on the ground floor of the building. Elif and Tarek. Sitting across from each other at a table by the window like it was the most natural thing in the world. My son was there too, sitting next to Tarek's kid, his best friend, coloring on a placemat. 2 families merged into one, and I was the only one who'd been cut out. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold my phone steady enough to take a photo. I took one anyway. Then I went home and I didn't sleep for 3 days. The evidence came fast after that. Hotel check-in records, Elif's name, Tarek's name, same dates, same locations. Cab receipts from her account showing rides to his apartment at 11 p.m. 1 amen. 3 amen. And then scrolling through old messages on the family iPad my son used, I found it. A synced contact. Asterisk, asterisk, Tarek. Asterisk, asterisk. A flower. She gave him a flower emoji. This man I'd sat across from at barbecues who'd clinked his beer against mine while our boys played in the yard, who'd looked me in the eye and asked how things were going with Elif. She'd saved his name with a little blossom next to it like he was something precious and new. I called Celine, Tarek's ex-wife. She picked up on the first ring like she'd been waiting. I know, she said. I've known for over a year. She'd already left Tarek. Already had her own evidence. She told me things that made the timeline stretch back further than I'd imagined. Comments Tarek had made. Trips that didn't add up the way Elif had started showing up at school events. She'd never attended before. Always when. Tarek was volunteering. My lawyer sent everything to Elif's lawyer on a Thursday. By Friday, the daily insults stopped. The texts went silent. The woman who told me I'd never see my son again suddenly had nothing to say. Monday morning, her lawyer called mine. Elif wanted to retract the divorce filing. She wanted to come home. She said nothing had happened with Tarek. She said she loved me. And God help me, I almost believed her. Murat didn't yell. He just sat across from me at his kitchen table and said, "She's not coming back to you. She's running from the evidence." 6 weeks passed. Elif moved back into the house. I stayed in my rental. We existed in a cold, airless limbo. No calls, no texts, no contact at all. She had our son. I had my spreadsheets. Then one morning I woke up and something had shifted. Something behind my ribs, some load-bearing wall I'd been propping up for a decade, just gave way. I booked a bus ticket to her hometown. I called her father's house and told Hassan I was coming to talk to his daughter. He said fine. I walked into that living room, sat down across from Elif, and for the first time in our marriage, I said the words on times, my times, terms. I want the divorce. Elif stared at me. Then she picked up her coffee cup. She didn't throw it immediately. That's the part people never believe when I tell this story. There was a pause, maybe 2 seconds, maybe 3, where she held the cup at chest level and looked at me like she was calculating something. Not rage. Calculation. The same look she'd had when she filed the restraining order, when she retracted the divorce, when she moved back into the house without a single word of explanation. Then she threw it. The coffee hit me across the left side of my face and neck. It wasn't boiling. Turkish coffee cools fast in those small cups, but it was hot enough to make me gasp, hot enough to leave a red mark that lasted 3 days. The cup bounced off my shoulder and shattered on the tile floor. Elif stood up and said, "You don't get to decide when this ends." Then she walked out of her father's living room down the hall and slammed a door so hard the framed calligraphy above the sofa rattled against the wall. I sat there with coffee dripping off my jaw onto my shirt. Hassan was standing in the kitchen doorway. I don't know how long he'd been there. His face was the color of ash. "What did she do?" he said. Not a question. He'd seen it. She threw her coffee at me. Hassan didn't move for a long time. Then he walked down the hallway, and I heard him knock on the door. I heard Elif's voice muffled, defiant. I heard Hassan's voice get louder. Then I heard a name. Tariq. I hadn't told him. I hadn't told either of her parents. The restraining order, the divorce filing, the retraction they'd gotten, Elif's version of all of it. I was the bad husband. I was the reason she'd come home. I was the threat. But Hassan was saying Tariq's name and Elif was screaming back, and then her mother Nermin appeared from somewhere, the garden maybe, or a back room, and stood in the hallway with her hand over her mouth. I should have left. I know that now. But I couldn't move. The coffee was cooling on my skin, and I was listening to a family come apart through a closed door. Then Sem walked in. Elif's brother. 35, built like a wrestler, the kind of man who fills a doorframe. He'd come from somewhere nearby, a neighbor must have called, or maybe he'd been expected for lunch. He looked at me, looked at the coffee stain on my shirt, looked down the hallway where his father was shouting. "You found out about Tariq," he said. My stomach dropped. "You knew." Sem sat down across from me. The same chair Elif had been in. He put his hands flat on the table like he was bracing himself. I saw them. Months ago. At a cafe near the university. I told her to end it. And she told me to mind my own business. I stared at him. This man I'd spent holidays with, shared meals with. Called times AB, times out of respect, even though he was younger than me. He'd known, and he'd sat across from me at family dinners and said nothing. I thought she'd stop, Sem said. He couldn't look at me. I thought it was... I don't know. I thought she'd stop. Down the hallway, Hassan's voice hit a register I'd never heard from him. The door opened. Elif came out carrying a bag, not packed, just scrapped clothes spilling from the zipper. Hassan was behind her, pointing at the front door. "Not in my house," he said. "You don't bring this shame into my house." Elif looked at me as she passed through the living room. No tears. No remorse. Just that same calculation, recalibrating, figuring out her next move. She left. Nerman left 2 hours later. Took a bus back to the city without saying goodbye to anyone. She texted me that evening, one message, no follow-up times. Your wife didn't learn her lesson. Asterisk. Elif took our son to her aunt's place. Then she blocked my number, my WhatsApp, my email. She blocked Murat. She blocked my mother. She built a wall of silence around my child and dared me to climb it. 4 months. That's how long I went without hearing my son's voice. 4 months of calling a lawyer every week and being told times these things take time, asterisk. 4 months of driving past playgrounds and having to pull over. 4 months of waking up at 3 a.m. and checking the family location app, even though the tablet had been factory reset. She filed for divorce again. Second attempt. But this time, her arsenal was empty. The restraining order had been discredited, the fabricated allegations exposed, the infidelity documented with hotel records and cab receipts, and a contact saved with a flower emoji. Her own brother had confirmed the affair. Her own father had thrown her out. My lawyer filed the countersuit on infidelity grounds. In Turkish family law, that changes everything. Custody, compensation, the entire architecture of the settlement. It's been 18 months now. 18 months of litigation. I lost my job 7 months and too many court dates, too many sick days spent sitting in my rental staring at the wall. I lost the house because I couldn't pay a mortgage on a place I wasn't allowed to live in. I lost weight. I lost friends who got tired of hearing about it. But last month, Elif's lawyer called mine and said she'd agree to whatever compensation I demanded. The woman who threw coffee in my face, who fabricated a restraining order, who stole 4 months of my son's life, who saved another man's name with a blossom next to it, she's out of moves. Murat asked me if I felt vindicated. I told him I felt like a man who won a house fire. Everything I owned was inside.
Story 5.
My boyfriend called me evil for being a landlord while living in my house completely rent-free. Let that satisfying little irony sink in for a second. So I inherited a duplex. I let my boyfriend move in without charging him a single cent. And the moment he found out I collect rent from the tenant downstairs, he demanded I hand over half that income to him or else I'm, quote, just as bad as every landlord who ever screwed him over. It got so much worse from there. I'm 22 female. My boyfriend is Derek, he's 25. My dad is Lars, and he becomes important later, trust me. Then there's Marin, my downstairs tenant, a lovely woman in her 30s, who accidentally blew up my entire relationship by knocking on my door about a broken freezer. Let me back up and give you the full picture, because I think context matters here, and I want to be as clear as possible. I should note, I'm not in the US. I don't even live in a country where English is the first language, so bear with me if some of this reads a little stiff. I'm trying. I inherited the duplex from my grandmother when I was 20. She left it to me specifically, not my parents, not my cousins, me. It's nothing glamorous. We're talking about a place roughly an hour's drive from the nearest city, 15 minutes to the closest store. The town has maybe 3,000 people, a preschool, one playground, and a school for kids ages 6 through 16. That's the infrastructure. So when people ask why I only charge Marin $500 a month for a 5-room unit, that's why. It's not the city. It's not even close to the city. $500 is fair here. Marin thought it was more than fair. She'd told me twice that she felt lucky to have found the place. I moved into the upstairs unit after my grandmother passed. Did some repairs myself. Painted, replaced the bathroom tiles with Lars standing behind me reading instructions off his phone because neither of us had done tile work before. It became mine in a way that felt earned, not just inherited. Derek came into my life about 8 months before everything fell apart. We met through mutual friends, dated for 4 months, and when his lease ended and his roommate situation imploded, I offered him my spare room. That evolved into him sleeping in my bed within 2 weeks. He never asked what the rent situation was. I never brought it up. He moved in with a duffel bag and a gaming PC, and I thought, this is easy. This is good. He knew I owned the building. He knew someone lived downstairs. What he apparently never connected was that someone lives downstairs meant someone pays me rent to live downstairs. In hindsight, maybe that's on me for not being explicit. Maybe not so clear. I apologize for that. But also, what did he think was happening that Marin was squatting that my dead grandmother's duplex operated on the honor system? He never offered to pay rent. Not once. Not even a token gesture, not even a, hey, should I Venmo you for utilities? He'd split groceries with me roughly 50-50. And he seemed to consider that his full contribution to our shared existence. I didn't push it. I loved him. I thought we were building towards something. I told myself that keeping score wasn't what good partners did. Then the freezer broke. It was a Thursday evening. Derek and I were on the couch, his feet on my lap, some documentary playing that neither of us was watching. 3 knocks on the door. I opened it, and there was Marin apologetic, arms crossed, like she was cold, even though it was June. I'm so sorry to bother you. The freezer downstairs just died. Everything's thawing. I told her not to worry about it. I said I'd reimburse her for a replacement, and that she should pick whatever model worked for the space and send me the receipt. Standard landlord stuff. Marin thanked me, apologized again, and left. I closed the door. Derek had muted the TV. Why would you pay for her freezer? His voice was flat. Not angry yet. Just genuinely confused, like I'd offered to buy a stranger's car. Because I'm her landlord. It's my responsibility to maintain the appliances. The silence that followed had weight. I watched his expression change in stages, confusion, then something clicking behind his eyes, then his jaw tightening. You charge her rent. How much? $500 a month. He stood up. My legs went cold where his feet had been. You're a Times landlord, asterisk. You collect rent from people. You profit off someone needing a roof over their head. Derek, it's $500 a month for a 5-room. That's not the point. His hand cut through the air. Landlords are parasites, every single one. They hoard housing and leech off working people, and he laughed, but it came out cracked. I've been sleeping next to a landlord this whole time. My stomach dropped. Not because I agreed with him, but because of the look on his face. Pure disgust. Directed at me. Over a broken freezer. I tried to talk. He wouldn't let me finish a sentence. Every time I opened my mouth, he'd talk over me with another variation of the same accusation. Asterisk, evil. Exploitative. No different from the guy who raised his rent 3 times in 2 years. Asterisk. Then he said it. If you had any integrity, you'd give me half that income. $500 a month, I get $250. That's the bare minimum of making this right. I blinked. Making times what time's right. The fact that you've been hiding this from me, the fact that I'm living with someone who exploits people for profit, you owe me that. He went to bed. I stayed on the couch until 2 a.m, replaying every word, my chest tight, my hands shaking, and for 3 full days after that, Derek didn't speak to me at all. It was during those silent days, lying awake at 4 a.m., while he slept soundly beside me, that I started counting. Every month, he'd lived with me rent-free. Every utility bill I'd covered alone. Every time I'd bought groceries, he forgot to reimburse. And I started reading what strangers on the internet had to say about it. That's when I called Lars. I texted Lars on a Tuesday. 3 words times, can you come asterisk? He didn't ask why. He didn't call back with questions. He just replied times. What time? Asterisk. I told him 7. He said he'd be in the driveway by 6:30. That's Lars. That's always been Lars. He once drove 40 minutes to my university because I mentioned on the phone that my tire looked low. Didn't tell me he was coming. I walked out of a lecture, and there he was, crouched by my car with a pressure gauge reading glasses on. The 3 silent days had done something to me. Not what Derek probably intended. I think he expected the silence to function like a siege, starve me out, make me desperate enough to concede. And for the first day, maybe the first day and a half, it worked. I made his coffee. I left a note on the counter that said Times. I'm sorry, can we talk? Times I caught myself mentally rehearsing apologies for owning property my dead grandmother left me. But somewhere around hour 50 of being frozen out by a man who had never paid a single bill in my home, something shifted. I stopped feeling guilty. I started feeling stupid. Different sensation entirely. Guilt sits in your chest. Stupidity burns in your face. I reread the comments people had left on my post. Some were harsh, some were kind. Almost all of them asked the same question I'd been avoiding times. Why does he think he deserves half the income from a building he has no connection to, no investment in, and no legal claim over asterisks? I didn't have an answer. And that was the answer. Lars pulled into the driveway at 6:28. I know because I was watching from the kitchen window. He turned the engine off, reclined his seat slightly, and started reading something on his phone. He didn't come inside. I hadn't asked him to. I just needed to know he was there. Derek came home from work at 6:50. He walked past Lars's car without acknowledging it. Came inside, dropped his bag by the door, opened the fridge, and stood there staring into it like it owed him something. Can we sit down? I said. He closed the fridge. Looked at me. His expression was the one he'd been wearing for 3 days flat, punishing a little performative. He sat on the couch. I sat beside him. One cushion between us. I've been thinking about what you said, I started. About landlords profiting being wrong. He crossed his arms. Waited. If that's genuinely what you believe, and I'm not saying you're wrong to feel that way, would you feel better if I donated half the rental income to a housing charity? There's one in the city that helps people find affordable. A times charity asterisk. Yes. If the issue is that I'm profiting off housing, then the money could go to... You want to give times my times money to a charity. The words landed and just stayed there, suspended between us. Asterisk. My money. Asterisk. He'd said it without flinching. Without even hearing himself. It was never your money, Derek. His jaw tightened. The arms uncrossed. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for a moment I thought he might actually engage, might realize what he'd just revealed. Instead, he laughed. Short, bitter through his nose. You're crazy. You know that. You're actually insane. I'm asking you a genuine question. If landlords profiting is the problem, why does the solution involve you profiting instead? Because I've been times here, asterisk. I've been part of this. You've lived here for free. For 8 months. You've never paid rent. You've never paid a utility bill. You split groceries, maybe 70% of the time. Oh, so now you're keeping score. I wasn't. I started. He stood up. The cushion between us decompressed slowly, which is a strange thing to notice during the moment your relationship ends, but I noticed it. I regret ever meeting you, he said. And he said it quietly, which made it worse. Yelling, I could have dismissed. This was deliberate. Surgical. Meant to lodge somewhere permanent. I'm going to tell everyone what kind of person you are. Every single person we know. Derek. Don't. He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door, then stopped, looked at them, looked at me, and threw them. Not at me exactly. at my feet. They hit the floor and skidded into the baseboard. Then he turned and punched the wall beside the doorframe. Not hard enough to break through, but hard enough that the sound made my whole body flinch. The front door opened. Lars filled the frame. He didn't say a word. Just stood there, hands at his sides, reading glasses still pushed up on his forehead. Derek looked at him. Looked at me. Laughed again, that same cracked, bitter sound. Daddy to the rescue. Perfect. This is perfect. He grabbed his jacket off the hook. Pushed past Lars, who stepped aside just enough to let him through without contact. The door to his car slammed. The engine started. Gravel popped under tires. Lars looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded. Then I shook my head. Then I sat back down on the couch and pressed my palms flat against my thighs to stop them from trembling. He sat in the chair across from me and didn't say anything else for a long time. That's Lars. He knows when silence is a weapon and when it's a gift. This was the second kind. I changed the locks the next morning. Called a locksmith before I'd even made coffee. It cost me more than I expected, but I would have paid triple. Derek texted once 2 days later. Times I need my stuff. Asterisk. I told him he could come Saturday between noon and 2 and that Lars would be present. He agreed without argument. He showed up with a friend I didn't recognize, filled 3 garbage bags, and left in under 20 minutes. He didn't look at me. His friend nodded politely on the way out, which was almost worse, the second-hand embarrassment of a stranger witnessing the wreckage. Maybe not so clear. I apologized for that, and I tried my best writing out everything as clearly and with as much detail as I could. Sorry if it feels a bit anticlimactic due to the style of how I wrote it. I tried. Here's what I know now. I gave someone free housing for 8 months. Covered his utilities. Shared my bed, my kitchen, my grandmother's home. And the moment he discovered I received $500 a month from the woman downstairs, he didn't feel betrayed. He felt times entitled asterisk. Those are different things. Betrayal looks inward. Entitlement looks at your wallet. I don't think Derek hated landlords. I think Derek hated that I had something he didn't, and ideology gave him a vocabulary for that resentment. Marin still lives downstairs. She texted me the day after everything happened. She'd heard the wall punch, the shouting, the car peeling out. She asked if I was safe. I told her yes. She sent a heart emoji and didn't pry further. The new freezer works great, by the way.
Story 6.
For 2 years, the wall separating my townhouse from theirs might as well have been made of paper. The soundtrack to my life was their marriage imploding in real time. I didn't know their favorite colors or their political leanings, but I knew Jack was a useless, pathetic excuse for a man and Jill was a dramatic, blood-sucking harpy. Their words, not mine. I just had the misfortune of a front row seat. I'm Nancy. My husband Mark and I moved into this neat little row of suburban homes, thinking we'd found a quiet slice of peace. We were wrong. Next door lived Jack and Jill. Yes, really. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their fights were legendary. They weren't quiet, simmering arguments. They were full-blown, window-rattling spectacles. It always followed the same script. The shouting would start usually around 8 p.m., escalating until Jill's voice hit a piercing shriek. Then came the finale, the slam of the front door and the sound of Jack's car peeling out of the driveway. Jill would then usually throw something against our shared wall for good measure. A plate, a shoe, maybe a small appliance. It was hard to tell. Mark would just shake his head. Someone should call someone, he'd mutter into his book, and say what I'd reply. My neighbors are loud and hate each other. That's not a crime. We weren't friends. We were neighbors, in the most literal sense of the word. We shared a wall and a strange silent understanding that we would never acknowledge the chaos we both knew was happening. A polite nod while getting the mail was the extent of our relationship. I didn't want to be involved. Jill had a razor wire personality. You could feel the hostility radiating off her, even from 10 feet away. Then came the last fight. It was different. The volume was the same, but the finality in her voice was new. "Get out," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I swear to God, Jack, if you are still here in the morning, I will burn all your things on the lawn." The door slammed harder than ever. The car engine roared to life, and then faded into the distance. But this time there was no crashing sound against the wall. There was just silence. A heavy, unnerving quiet that felt louder than the shouting. The next morning, I was watering the petunias on my porch when I saw him. Jack was loading 2 enormous suitcases into the back of a waiting airport taxi. He wasn't frantic or angry. He looked hollowed out, defeated but calm. He moved with the slow, deliberate pace of a man who had made a decision and wasn't looking back. He saw me watching. He didn't smile. He just gave me a single tired nod. It was a nod that said, "Times, I'm done. It's over. You won't be hearing us anymore." Asterisk. He slid into the back of the cab and it pulled away from the curb, turning the corner and disappearing. I never saw him again. Later, through the neighborhood grapevine, I heard he'd taken a job transfer to Singapore. He didn't just leave the house. He left the continent. The silence that followed was glorious. For 3 days, my home was my own. No screaming, no slamming, no late-night drama. Mark and I actually sat on our back patio and had a conversation without being interrupted by a torrent of abuse from next door. It was bliss. The bliss ended on a Thursday morning. I was heading out to my car, juggling my laptop bag and a travel mug of coffee when my front door was practically blocked. It was Jill. She looked like she'd been dragged through a hedge backward and then set on fire. Her hair was a matted mess, her eyes were puffy and bloodshot, and she was wearing a stained bathrobe that looked like it had seen better days. A decade ago. "Nancy," she said, her voice a raw croak. "Thank God, I need you." I froze my keys halfway to the car door lock. This was new. In 2 years, she had never spoken more than 3 consecutive words to me. "Jill, is everything okay?" I asked a stupid, reflexive question. Of course, nothing was okay. "No, it's not okay," she snapped, her voice already rising with that familiar frantic edge. "He's gone. He actually did it. Jack is gone." She gestured vaguely toward the sky as if he'd ascended into the heavens instead of catching a flight to Asia. He drained the joint account and left me with the kids. And the mortgage. I stood there unsure of what to say. "I'm sorry to hear that." She waved a dismissive hand, cutting through my pathetic attempt at sympathy. "Yeah, well, sorry doesn't help me. I have a problem. A big one." She didn't wait for an invitation. She just launched into it, pacing back and forth on my small patch of lawn like a caged animal. "My shift at the hospital starts at 6 a.m., she said, stabbing a finger in the air for emphasis. "Which means I have to be out of the house by 5:30 latest. The kids Aiden and Chloe, they can't be left alone." He always did the morning routine because his job was flexible. Now he's gone, and I have no one. My mother lives in Florida, his parents hate me, the feeling's mutual. And I don't have any friends around here. I could see why. I just nodded, my brain screaming at me to make an excuse to get in my car and drive away. But I was trapped, pinned by the sheer force of her desperation. So she said finally, stopping her pacing to stand directly in front of me, her bloodshot eyes boring into mine. "Here's what needs to happen." My eyebrows shot up. Asterisk. What needs to happen times. Not I was hoping you could help. Or is there any chance you could? No, this was a directive. A battle plan. I'll bring them over to you at 5 in the morning, she stated, as if we'd already discussed and agreed to this. You can give them breakfast. Cereal is fine. Aiden likes the sugary kind. Chloe is picky. Then you'll need to drive Aiden to elementary school. Bell rings at 8. Chloe's daycare is the other direction you'll have to drop her off after. It opens at 7:30. I opened my mouth to speak, but she held up a hand and kept going, a runaway train of demands. Pickup is at 3 for Aiden and 5 for Chloe. You can bring them back here, get Aiden started on his homework. He's bad at math, so you'll have to sit with him. Then you can make them dinner. Nothing fancy. They like mac and cheese or chicken nuggets. I should be home around 7, maybe 7:30 if traffic is bad. My jaw was now somewhere around my ankles. I was speechless, utterly paralyzed by the audacity of it all. It was so far beyond a normal request that my brain couldn't even process how to refuse. She took a deep breath. Not done yet. Oh, and weekends? I'm going to have to pick up extra shifts to make ends meet, so I'll need you to have them on Saturdays, probably Sundays too. Full days, obviously. She finally finished, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She looked at me, her head tilted as if she had just solved the world's most complex puzzle. As if she'd just handed me a gift, an opportunity, instead of a life sentence of unpaid, round-the-clock servitude for the children of a woman I couldn't stand. So she said, clapping her hands together softly, the sound like a gavel, "Is tomorrow at 5 too soon to start?" I stared at her, the travel mug of coffee, suddenly feeling very heavy in my hand. For a split second, I thought it was a joke. A very, very bad joke delivered by a woman with zero sense of humor. My brain cycled through a dozen responses, from screaming to just turning around and walking back into my house. What came out was a short, sharp bark of laughter. Jill's face, already a roadmap of stress, tightened into a knot of confusion. "What's so funny?" "You," I said, unable to stop a second laugh from escaping. "You're funny. Hilarious, actually." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm not joking, Nancy. I'm in a crisis." "No, you're not in a crisis," I corrected her, my voice dropping the humor and picking up a steely edge. "You're in a situation of your own making, and you've just presented me with a full-time job description. So let's talk business." "What are you paying?" Jill blinked, genuinely stunned. "Paying," she repeated, as if I just asked her to explain quantum physics in Greek. "Yes. Pay. Money. Compensation," I clarified, ticking the words off on my fingers. "You've outlined a job that's roughly 90 hours a week. It includes childcare, a chauffeur service, tutoring, and a personal chef for 2 children. That's a professional nanny, a driver, and a cook all rolled into one. So what's the salary? I assume it's competitive given the outrageous hours." She scoffed, a nasty, incredulous sound that scraped at my last nerve. "Hey you, don't be ridiculous. I can't afford that. I told you, I have no friends and no one else to ask. You're my neighbor. You're supposed to times help, asterisk." The sheer, unadulterated entitlement of that statement was breathtaking. It was like she thought proximity came with a contractual obligation to solve her life problems. All my neighborly politeness evaporated. "Listen to me very carefully, Jill," I said, my voice low and dangerously calm. Absolutely not. The answer isn't just no, it's hell no. It's, are you out of your ever-loving mind? No. I am not your friend. I am not your family. I am certainly not your unpaid servant. I am the woman who has had to listen to you scream at your husband for 2 years straight. The fact that you have no one else to turn to is a direct result of how you treat people. It is not my problem to solve. I took a step toward my car, finally breaking the invisible wall of her desperation that had held me captive. Her face contorted with rage. "You selfish bitch," she shrieked, finding her familiar volume. "My kids are going to suffer because of you." "No," I said, turning the key in my car door lock. "Your kids are suffering because their father fled to another continent to get away from you. Think about that." I didn't wait for a reply. I slid into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and locked it. Jill stood on my lawn, her mouth opening and closing like a fish, her face a mask of purple fury. I started the engine, backed out of my driveway without a second glance, and drove away, my heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and righteous anger. That evening, I was chopping onions with probably a little more force than necessary when I told Mark the whole story. I recounted her list of demands, her schedule, her expectation, that it would all be for the low, low price of nothing. He listened, his fork suspended over his plate of pasta, his expression growing more astonished with every detail. When I finished with my final line about Jack fleeing the continent, he finally spoke. "Wow," he breathed out, setting his fork down. "That is completely insane." "Right," I said, relieved. "I thought I was losing my mind." He was quiet for a long moment, swirling the noodles on his plate. "But Nan," he started slowly, and I could already hear but I didn't want to hear. "Don't you think you were a little harsh?" I stopped chopping, the knife still in my hand. "Harsh, Mark," she asked me to dedicate my entire life to her children for free. I know, the request was ridiculous," he conceded, holding up a hand. "But calling her out like that, saying it was her fault Jack left. I don't know, the woman is clearly drowning. And what about Aiden and Chloe? They're just little kids caught in the middle. Maybe we should offer to at least help sometimes. For the kids' sake." I put the knife down with a loud clatter and turned to face him fully. "Are you serious, Mark? You've heard her." "You've heard them. She is a nasty, vitriolic person. Do you honestly believe for 1 second that helping sometimes would stay? Sometimes it would be an inch that she would take for a marathon? She would never, ever reciprocate. If our positions were reversed, she'd be selling tickets to watch her house burn." "That's a bit of an exaggeration," he muttered. "Is it?" I challenged. "We've lived next to her for 2 years. Have you ever seen her be kind to anyone? To Jack, to the mailman, to her own children when they're playing too loud? No. She's a black hole of negativity. You want to help for the kids' sake. The best thing for those kids would be if she learned that her actions have consequences." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I just feel bad for them." "I feel bad for them too," I said, my voice softening slightly. "But my setting myself on fire is not going to keep them warm. It'll just get me burned. Mark, her entire life is imploding because of who she is. Her husband didn't just move across town, he moved across the Times, planet Asterisk. That's not a separation, that's an evacuation. She has no friends because she's incapable of friendship. People aren't things to be used when you're in a jam. She's learning that the hard way, and I refuse to be her lesson plan." He didn't argue further. He just nodded and quietly went back to eating his pasta. The conflict wasn't resolved, but the debate was over. I had drawn my line in the sand, and I wasn't budging. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I glanced out the window. The lights were on next door. Through her sheer curtains, I could see Jill's silhouette as she paced back and forth in her living room, a phone pressed to her ear. She was gesticulating wildly, her body language radiating the same frantic, angry energy I'd seen on my lawn that morning. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew the sound of her desperation. It was the same sound that had driven her husband 8,000 miles away and left her utterly, completely alone. And for the first time in 2 years, the noise from next door didn't bother me at all.
Story 7.
The key in my hand felt heavier than it was. Not just a piece of brass, but a 30-year mortgage, a testament to surviving my 20s and the official deed to my own little patch of quiet. For the first time in my 27 years, I had a front door I could lock against the world. against my family. Specifically against my Uncle Frank. Frank is 53, and for every one of those years, he's been a walking, talking black hole of a man. The family lore is that he fell out of a tree when he was 9 and suffered a mild brain injury. There's no medical record of this, of course. No doctor's note. Just a convenient all-purpose excuse handed down through the generations to explain away a lifetime of being a world-class asshole. It's the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. Frank screaming at a waitress times the injury. Asterisk. Frank's making my cousin cry at her own wedding times. Remember what he went through. Asterisk. Frank's telling me I'll never amount to anything times. He doesn't mean it, Gavin. It's just the thing with his head. Asterisk. So when I planned the housewarming party, a celebration of my new Frank-proof fortress, he was pointedly, specifically, and deliberately not on the guest list. My mistake was telling my dad. Sounds great, son, he'd said over the phone 2 days before the party. Your mother and I are so proud. We'll be there. Oh, and I'll pick up Frank on the way. The line went silent. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a clock, the sound of my sanctuary's walls dissolving into sand. No, I said. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, you will not be picking up Frank. He's not invited. Gavin, don't be like that, he said, his voice shifting into that familiar wheedling tone of the professional enabler. It's a family party. He's your uncle. It's times my times party and times my times house. And my one house rule is, no assholes allowed. Frank is the king of them. A heavy sigh crackled through the phone. You know how he is. That thing that happened when he was a kid, it's hard for him. This would mean a lot. It would mean a lot to Times you, Times Dad. It would mean you don't have to deal with his whining about being left out. I'm not doing it. The answer is no. I thought I'd won. I really did. I thought for once the door I'd locked would actually stay shut. The day of the party was perfect. Chloe, my girlfriend of 3 years, had orchestrated the whole thing with the precision of a drill sergeant. She'd strung fairy lights across the new deck I'd built. She'd curated a playlist that was just the right mix of chill and upbeat. The air smelled like grilled burgers and freshly cut grass. My friends were there, my mom was beaming, and for a few hours my house felt like a home. A real one. My mom pulled me aside by the kitchen island, her hand warm on my arm. It's a beautiful home, sweetie. You and Chloe have done such a good job. She glanced toward the front door, a flicker of anxiety in her eyes. Your father isn't... He didn't. I told him no, Mom. Firmly. She nodded, but the relief on her face was temporary, like a sunbeam in a hurricane. She knew her husband, and she knew her brother-in-law. Around 8 o'clock, just as the sun was setting and the party was hitting its stride, my dad's sedan pulled into the driveway. My stomach turned to ice. He got out of the driver's side, and then the passenger door opened. Out climbed Uncle Frank. He was dressed like he was attending a parole hearing, stained polo shirt, pleated khakis that had given up the ghost years ago. He surveyed my house, my little blue Cape Cod that I'd poured my entire life savings into with a sneer that could curdle milk. My dad caught my eyes. They walked up the path, giving me a weak apologetic shrug as if to say, Times, what could I do, asterisk? Frank didn't even say hello. He stepped through the front door, my front door, and his first words were, Jesus, Gavin. It's a bit of a dive, isn't it? He said it loudly. Loud enough for the music to feel like it dipped. Loud enough for a few of my friends to turn their heads. I felt my dad's hand on my shoulder. He's just kidding, son, he muttered, a desperate plea in his voice. Frank ignored him and bulldozed his way to the beer cooler, grabbing one without looking. He took a long swig and continued his tour of insults. Paint job's a little sloppy in that corner, he said, pointing at the living room wall. And these floors? Laminate tisk. Should have gone with real hardwood. I just stood there, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. I could feel Chloe's presence next to me, a silent, supportive anchor. Every comment was a rock thrown through my window. Every sneer was a scratch down the new paint. This wasn't just my house he was attacking. It was my life, my accomplishment, my future with the woman I loved. He made his way onto the deck where Chloe had been laughing with her friends. The laughter died as he approached. He looked them all up and down, his eyes finally landing on Chloe. He gave her a slow, deliberate once-over, a greasy appraisal that made my skin crawl. "You must be the girlfriend," he slurred. He hadn't been here 10 minutes and he was already half drunk. Chloe, ever the diplomat, forced a smile. "I'm Chloe. It's nice to finally meet you." "Frank," he grunted. He took another swig of his beer, then gestured with the bottle back towards me where I stood frozen in the doorway. "I gotta ask," he said, his voice carrying across the now quiet deck. "I'm just curious. What's a pretty little thing like you doing with a loser like him?" The world stopped. The fairy lights, the music, the scent of summer, it all just vanished. There was only the stunned, horrified silence of our friends and the ugly, triumphant smirk on my uncle's face. He'd found the one button he knew I couldn't ignore. He hadn't just insulted my house anymore. He'd brought his poison into the heart of my home and aimed it directly at Chloe. I saw her face. The brilliant smile she always wore faltered just for a second, but I saw it. I saw the hurt. And in that instant, something inside me, a chain I'd been wearing my whole life, finally snapped. My dad was already moving, starting his usual routine. "Frank, that's enough. Come on, let's get you a burger." I put a hand on my dad's chest, stopping him cold. I didn't look at him. I didn't look at Chloe or my friends or my mother whose face was a mask of dread. My eyes were locked on one person. The low, dangerous calm in my own voice surprised me. "Uncle Frank. Come here." I grabbed his bicep. His arm was surprisingly soft, flabby under the stained polo shirt. He tried to pull back, but he was drunk and I was fueled by a type of white-hot clarity I'd never felt before. "We're going to have a chat." I dragged him off the deck past the stunned faces of my friends, through my new living room and right out the front door I had been so proud of. I didn't stop until we were on the lawn under the harsh glare of the porch light. The party music sounded distant now. "What the hell is your problem?" he slurred, yanking his arm free. "No, what is Times? Your Times problem," I shot back, my voice low and shaking with fury. "For my entire life, my entire goddamn life, I have watched you terrorize every single person in this family. I have watched you make my mom cry, my cousins hide, and my dad invent 1,000 pathetic excuses for you. I got an injury. Stop." I put a hand up, cutting him off. The word was a blade. "Do not say it. Do not use that pathetic 30-year-old lie. There is nothing wrong with your brain that being a decent human being wouldn't fix. You're not injured, Frank. You're just a mean, bitter bully, and you've been getting away with it for far too long." He looked genuinely shocked, his jaw slack. It was like watching a cartoon character get hit with an anvil. He had no script for this. "You came into my home," I continued, stepping closer, my voice getting louder. "A home I worked my ass off for. A place Chloe and I built together. And with your first breath, you tried to burn it down. You insulted my house, you insulted my life, and then you insulted her. You don't get to do that." "I was just joking around," he sputtered, finally finding his voice. "Was it a joke when you told my cousin her husband would probably leave her within a year? Was it a joke when you told me I'd be working dead-end jobs for the rest of my life? It's never a joke, Frank. It's poison. And you are done spewing it around me." I pointed a finger at his chest. "Here's the new reality. You have two options. Option 1, you walk back onto that deck, you find Chloe, and you apologize to her. A real apology. And then for the rest of the night, you sit in a chair and you don't say a single goddamn word to anyone. Option 2, you get your ass off my property right now and you never ever come back. You will not be invited to my wedding. You will never meet my kids. We are done. For good. Choose." He stared at me, his face turning a blotchy red. The shock was curdling into his usual rage. I could see the gears turning, the calculation of how to twist this, how to make himself the victim. An apology was out of the question. It would be an admission of fault, a crack in his armor of assholery. "You can't talk to me like this," he snarled. "I'm your uncle." "You're a guest in my house who just insulted my girlfriend," I countered, my voice flat and cold. "The title uncle doesn't grant you a lifetime pass to be cruel." "Time's up. What's it going to be?" He gave a theatrical, disgusted sigh. He looked back at the house, at the warm lights, and the silhouettes of people who were happy without him. He couldn't stand it. "Fine," he spat. "I'm leaving." He turned and stomped toward the driveway, fumbling in his pocket for his phone. He didn't look back. I watched him go, my whole body trembling. I waited until I heard my dad's car door slam shut. The engine started and the headlights cut a path across my lawn before the car screeched out onto the street. The silence he left behind was deafening. I took a deep breath and walked back inside. Every eye was on me. The music had been turned down. My dad stood by the doorway, his face pale and etched with panic. "Gavin, what did you do?" "I did what you should have done 30 years ago," I said, my voice hoarse. "I walked right past him." Chloe met me in the middle of the room. She put her hands on my arms, her eyes searching mine. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I breathed, a genuine smile, finally breaking through. "Yeah, I think I am." My mom came over and hugged me tight. "Thank you," she whispered in my ear so only I could hear. "Oh, Gavin, thank you." That was the moment the first phone buzzed. It was my friend Mark across the room. He glanced down at his phone, a confused look on his face. Then another buzz. One of Chloe's friends. Then Chloe's phone in her back pocket. Then mine. I pulled it out. A text from my Aunt Carol Frank's sister. Asterisk. Carol. "What did you do to Frank? He's hysterical. Said you attacked him and threw him out for no reason. I can't believe you'd be so cruel. You know he's sensitive because of his injury." Asterisk. My blood ran cold. The retaliation had begun. Chloe read the text over my shoulder. Her phone was lighting up with notifications from a family group chat I wasn't in. She showed me the screen. My cousin Megan times Frank just texted Dad. He says Gavin went crazy on him. Called him a bunch of names in front of everyone. Asterisk. My Uncle Robert times unbelievable. After all, Frank has been through. Gavin's always been arrogant? Asterisk. A war was being declared, and Frank was launching his offensive from the passenger seat of my dad's car. He was reframing the narrative in real time, painting himself as the wounded party, and me as the unhinged, ungrateful nephew. My dad was now on his phone, his back to me. I could hear his hushed, frantic tones. No, he just overreacted. Frank, just calm down. I'll talk to him. He was already doing damage control. For Frank. The party was effectively over. My friends blessed them, tried to restart the music to keep the mood light, but the schism was palpable. The air was thick with it. Within minutes, the battle lines were drawn. My dad's side of the family, the enablers, the peacekeepers, the ones who had spent a lifetime building Frank's protective bubble, were firing off texts, calling each other, consolidating their support for the victim. My mom, on the other hand, stood by my side, a silent, steely sentinel. My friends gathered around, offering me beers and quiet words of support. "Dude, he was a total jerk. You did the right thing." Chloe wrapped her arm around my waist, a gesture of unwavering solidarity. "Let them talk," she said, her voice firm. "We know what happened." I looked around my new home. The fairy lights were still twinkling on the deck. The smell of burgers still hung in the air. But the quiet I'd bought was gone. The fortress I thought I'd built had been breached not by Frank, but by the toxic system that protected him. By kicking him out, I hadn't just removed one man from my party. I had taken a sledgehammer to the very foundation of my family. The rift was massive, and it was immediate. And looking at Chloe, feeling my mom's hand on my back, I knew it was a war I was supposed to have started long ago. The cost would be high, but for the first time standing in the wreckage, I felt free.
Story 8. I've had the flu before. This wasn't it. This was a bone-deep exhaustion that made climbing the stairs to my bedroom feel like scaling a mountain. It was a constant queasy roll in my stomach that made the smell of my mom's cooking, usually my favorite thing in the world, send me running for the bathroom. That's it, Mom said, standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. I'm making you an appointment. This has been going on for 2 weeks. I just groaned from my bed. It's a stomach bug, Mom. It'll pass. It's not passing, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Dr. Evans can see you tomorrow at 4. So, the next day, I found myself sitting on crinkly paper in a cold exam room, staring at a poster of the human circulatory system. Dr. Evans came in, her smile as warm and clinical as ever. So Maya, your mom says you haven't been feeling well. I listed the symptoms. The fatigue, the nausea, the weird dizzy spells. She listened, nodding, typing notes into her little laptop. Any chance you could be pregnant? She asked, her eyes not leaving the screen. I actually laughed. No. 0 chance. She finally looked at me. Are you sexually active? I have a boyfriend, I said. But we haven't. You know. I'm a virgin. It felt so juvenile to say out loud. But it was the truth. Liam and I had talked about it. We were waiting. We were careful. We did other stuff, sure, but never that. Never. Dr. Evans just nodded. Okay. Well, standard procedure, will run a urine test anyway just to rule it out. It's the easiest thing to check off the list. She handed me a plastic cup. I went, did my business, and came back feeling like we were wasting time. 20 minutes later, she knocked and re-entered the room, but this time she closed the door softly behind her. She wasn't smiling. Maya, she said, sitting on the stool across from me. I need you to listen to me very carefully. My blood went cold. What is it? Is it bad? She took a breath. Your urine test came back positive. You're pregnant. The world tilted. The circulatory system poster on the wall blurred into a swirl of red and blue. No. That's impossible. I told you I'm a virgin. The test is wrong. You have to do it again. We did, she said gently. We ran it twice. The results are conclusive. But how? My voice was a tiny cracking whisper. How is that possible? This is where the conversation went from unbelievable to downright science fiction. She started talking about something called outer course. How if semen is present near the vaginal opening, even without penetration, it's possible. The sperm can travel. She said it was extraordinarily rare. A 1 in a million medical anomaly. Like being struck by lightning. It's the only explanation, assuming what you're telling me is true, she finished, her face a mask of professional sympathy. I just stared at her, my hands numb. 1 in a million. I'd been struck by lightning. I don't remember leaving the clinic. I think I nodded and mumbled thank you. I found myself in my car clutching a folder full of pamphlets with smiling pregnant women on them. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the ignition. Liam. I had to tell Liam. I didn't even call. I just drove my mind a blank white-hot panic. I screeched into his driveway and was pounding on his front door before I even cut the engine. He opened it, a wide, easy smile on his face that disappeared the second he saw mine. Maya. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. We need to talk, I choked out. We sat on the edge of his bed, the space between us feeling like a canyon. I couldn't look at him. I just stared at the band poster on his wall, while the words tumbled out of my mouth in a messy, tear-soaked rush. The doctor's visit. The test. The impossible explanation. When I finally finished, the silence was deafening. I risked a glance at him. His face was pale, his jaw tight. So you're pregnant, he said, his voice flat. Yes, but Liam, it's yours. It has to be, Dr. Evans said. Don't he cut me off, standing up and pacing the room. Just don't. He ran a hand through his hair, not looking at me. You're telling me you got pregnant without having sex? Yes. That's what I'm trying to explain. It's this crazy rare thing. But it's possible. He finally stopped pacing and turned to face me. The look in his eyes shattered me. It wasn't anger. It was a deep, hollow disappointment. Who was it, Maya? What? No, Liam, you're not listening to me. I stood up, reaching for him. But he flinched back like I was on fire. Stop lying. He yelled, his voice cracking. Just tell me the truth. It'll be better than this. This insane story you made up. It's not a story. It's the truth. Tears were streaming down my face, now hot and useless. You have to believe me. He just shook his head slowly, a single bitter laugh escaping his lips. I really trusted you, he whispered. It was quieter than his yelling, but it hit me 10 times harder. That was it. The conversation was over. He walked me to the door, his body stiff, his face unreadable. I think you should go, he said. Liam, please. Goodbye, Maya. He shut the door in my face. I sat in my car, unable to move for what felt like hours. My phone buzzed. A text from him. My heart leaped with a stupid, desperate hope. I opened it. Asterisk. Don't contact me again. Asterisk. Then the second message. Asterisk. You have been blocked by this user. Asterisk. The next day at school was a nightmare. It started with whispers. I saw my best friend Chloe in a huddle with Liam's friend Mark by the lockers. They saw me and their conversation died instantly. Chloe wouldn't meet my eye. At lunch, I walked toward our usual table. Our group went silent. Liam was there staring at his tray, his face like stone. Chloe shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. I stood there holding my tray, feeling like the whole world was staring at me. No one said a word. No one moved to make room. I turned and walked away, dumping my untouched lunch in the trash and hiding in a bathroom stall until the bell rang. The text stopped. The Snapchats, the invites to the group chat, all gone. It was like I had been surgically removed from my own life. The rumor was everywhere Maya cheated. Maya's pregnant with some random guy's baby. Maya's a liar. My world shrank to the four walls of my bedroom. The nausea was a constant reminder. Every morning I'd wake up, and for one blissful second I'd forget. Then the sickness would roll in, and the memory of Liam's face, the dead silence at the lunch table, the word times, blocked times on my phone screen would come crashing back down. I was alone. Utterly and completely alone, trapped inside a truth that nobody would ever believe. The exhaustion wasn't just physical anymore. It was in my soul. I was drowning. One Friday night, a week after my life had imploded, I found myself scrolling numbly through Instagram. A new post from Chloe. A group picture from that night. They were all at the bowling alley. Our spot. They were all laughing. Liam was in the middle of the shot, his arms slung casually around a girl from our English class. He was smiling. I felt the familiar lurch in my stomach and barely made it to the bathroom in time, collapsing onto the cold tile floor as my body heaved. I was empty, hollowed out. There was nothing left to throw up. There was nothing left at all, except for the impossible one in a million thing growing inside me. A knock on my bedroom door made me jump. It was late, almost midnight. Maya. My mom's voice soft. Liam is here. He's downstairs. My heart hammered against my ribs. I hadn't seen or heard from him in 2 weeks. 2 weeks of silence and public shaming. I pulled on a sweatshirt over my pajamas and walked down the stairs like I was heading to my own execution. He was standing awkwardly in the foyer, refusing to look at me. He looked thinner, exhausted. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat and hard. "Can we talk, please?" We ended up in his car, the engine off, the streetlights painting stripes across the dashboard. The silence stretched until it was screaming. "I'm sorry," he finally said, staring at his hands on the steering wheel. The way I acted, it was crap. I was hurt and confused, and I was a total ass. I didn't say anything. An apology wasn't going to erase the memory of him slamming the door in my face or the sight of his arm around another girl. I couldn't sleep, he continued, his voice rough. "Your story?" It just kept playing in my head. It sounded so crazy. So I started looking things up. He finally turned to look at me, his eyes pleading. I typed pregnant but a virgin into Google Maya. I felt like a complete idiot. But stuff came up. Medical articles, case studies. They called it splash pregnancy or something. It's rare, like you said. Like lightning. I stared out the windshield. "So you believe Google, but you couldn't believe me." He flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I snapped, a bubble of cold fury rising in my chest. "You blocked me, Liam. You let everyone, Chloe, Mark, all of them think I'm some cheating whore. I had to hide in a bathroom stall at lunch because our friends looked at me like I was garbage. A text from you would have stopped it. But you were too busy bowling." The words hit him like a physical blow. He sagged against the seat. I know. I messed up. I messed up so badly. I don't know if it's my baby Maya. I honestly don't. But I know I shouldn't have left you to go through this alone. I want to be here. Whatever happens. "What does be here even mean?" I whispered. "It means we tell your parents." "Together," he said, his voice gaining a sliver of strength. "And then we figure out the rest." Telling my parents was the second worst conversation of my life. We sat them down at the kitchen table the next morning. Mom's face went from confused to horrified to something soft and sad. Dad just got quiet, his jaw tight, his hand resting on Mom's shoulder. I explained everything: the doctor's visit, the 1 in a million odds, the whole impossible truth. Liam sat beside me, silent, but present, confirming the outer course part. When my voice failed me. When I finished, my mom just looked at me, her eyes wet. "Oh, honey, you've been carrying this all by yourself." And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't just sick or angry. I was a scared 16-year-old. I crumpled and my mom was there, wrapping her arms around me. "We're here," she said, rocking me gently. "We'll figure this out. We're all going to figure this out." The next week was a blur of appointments. Liam came to every single one. We sat side by side for the ultrasound, the air thick with unspoken fear. The technician squirted cold jelly on my stomach, and a grainy black and white image flickered onto the screen. A tiny pulsating blip. A heartbeat. I felt Liam's hand find mine, his fingers cold but firm. It was real. A real thing living inside me. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with morning sickness. After we sat in a genetic counselor's office to arrange the prenatal paternity test. It was a simple blood draw from me and a cheek swab from Liam. "The results will be back in 7 to 10 business days," the counselor said cheerfully. 7 to 10 days of waiting for a verdict. Liam drove me home in silence. As I got out of the car, he grabbed my arm. "Maya," he said. "Whatever it says. I'm sorry." I know, I said. And I think I was starting to believe him. The call came 9 days later. I was in my room trying to do homework when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was Dr. Evans. "Maya, I have the results of the paternity test," she said. Her voice even. "Is Liam with you?" "He's on his way over," I lied, my heart pounding. "Just tell me." "The test concludes that Liam is the biological father," she said. "The probability is 99.99%. It's definitive." Vindication. It washed over me, so sharp and overwhelming it felt like pain. I wasn't a liar. I wasn't crazy. I was just the unluckiest girl in the world. When Liam arrived 10 minutes later, I just handed him the phone. I had Dr. Evans's office email the official lab report. He stood in my driveway and read it, his face unreadable. He read it again. Then he slowly sank onto the porch steps and put his head in his hands. I sat down next to him, leaving a foot of space between us. "I'm a monster," he whispered into his palms. "No, you're not," I said, my own voice hollow. "You were just a guy who heard something impossible." He finally looked up, his eyes red. "How do we fix this?" That's when we talked about the other decision. The one we'd both been avoiding. We couldn't have a baby. We were kids. This whole thing was born out of a nightmare, a medical fluke that had destroyed my life. Bringing a child into that felt wrong. It was a heavy, awful adult decision, and we made it together, sitting on my front steps. Our state had a mandatory waiting period and parental consent laws that felt like another layer of public humiliation I couldn't bear. We found a service online, a telehealth provider that worked with a pharmacy in a neighboring state. It was all discreet. A video call with a doctor who asked gentle questions. And a few days later, a small plain cardboard box arrived. That Saturday, we did it at my house. My parents went out for the day, giving us space. Liam sat with me on my bathroom floor. I took the first pill. Then hours later, the second set. The cramping started an hour after that. It was a deep, gut-wrenching pain that made me gasp. It came in waves, each one pulling a broken sob from my chest. Liam held my hand, his face pale. He got me a heating pad and a glass of water. His movements quiet and useless against the biological reality of what was happening. It was messy and painful and deeply, profoundly sad. As I lay curled up on the tile, he held a cool washcloth to my forehead. "I'm so sorry, Maya," he kept saying over and over like a prayer. "I'm so sorry." Later that night, the worst of it was over. I was lying in my bed, hollowed out and exhausted. Liam was curled up in the armchair across the room watching me sleep. The crisis was over. The lie was dead. The secret was gone. He must have seen my eyes open. "Hey," he whispered. He came over and sat on the edge of my bed. He took my hand. It was the first time we had touched without a sense of dread or obligation in a month. "Chloe texted me," he said quietly. "She heard we were back together. She asked if the baby was mine." I felt a flicker of the old anger. "What did you say?" "I sent her a picture of the paternity test," he said, his voice flat. "I didn't add anything else. Just the picture." My revenge wasn't a satisfying, fiery explosion. It was a cold, clinical PDF file sent over text. It was silence. It was the truth. "It's over," I said, more to myself than to him. "Yeah," he said, squeezing my hand. "It is." But it didn't feel over. We had survived the lightning strike. But now we had to live in the world it had scorched. Story 9.
When my sister Betsy called and asked me to be her bridesmaid, I didn't hesitate. "Yes, of course, yes," I practically shouted into the phone, my voice echoing in my small apartment. It was a chance to do it right this time. Her first wedding, 15 years ago, was a blur I experienced through spotty satellite calls and a handful of blurry photos. I was on a 9-month deployment halfway across the world, sweating in a uniform while she was gliding down an aisle in silk. The guilt of missing it had settled deep in my bones, a permanent ache. This time, I was going to be the best damn bridesmaid she'd ever seen. Betsy was ecstatic. "Oh, Liz, I knew I could count on you. It's going to be so much fun." Just a simple local thing. Classy but low-key. Mark and I just want to celebrate with our real friends and family this time. Simple and local sounded perfect. At 43, my tolerance for drama was at an all-time low, and my bank account wasn't exactly overflowing. I hung up the phone, buzzing with excitement, already picturing myself zipping up her dress and holding her bouquet. The first crack in the simple facade appeared a week later in the new Betsy's Bridal Brigade group chat. A picture popped up of 4 of us photoshopped into slinky satin dresses, the color of a faded rose. They were beautiful, I'll admit. Then came the link. Asterisk, maid of honor, Sarah Times. Wow, gorgeous Bets. Asterisk. Bridesmaid Chloe Times, love it. My finger hovered over the link before I tapped it. The webpage loaded. My eyes scanned past the elegant model and landed on the price. 500 of a mogtiv. I blinked, then did the math. With the mandatory matching shoes, $75 and alterations, I was looking at over $500. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on a simple thumbs up emoji. My phone buzzed with a private message from Sarah. Asterisk. A little steep right? Asterisk. I typed back instantly. Asterisk, a little. That's half my monthly grocery budget. Asterisk. Asterisk. Just the beginning, I'm afraid, Times, she replied. Asterisk. Just smile and swipe the credit card. Asterisk. Sarah was Betsy's oldest friend. She knew the terrain. I took her advice, closed the chat, and tried to forget about it. It was a one-time cost, I told myself. It's for Betsy. 2 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox with the subject line, Vegas Baby Bachelorette Bash. My heart sank. Las Vegas wasn't just a different state for me. I'm in Canada. This was an international trip. The email was a meticulously planned 4-day itinerary involving a penthouse suite VIP bottle service at 3 different clubs, a Magic Mike live show, and a mandatory all-white with a splash of neon dress code for Friday night. The estimated cost per person, not including flights or food, was $1,200. The group chat exploded. Asterisk Chloe times, oh my god, this is amazing. Asterisk bridesmaid Maria times, can't wait. I stared at my screen, feeling a cold dread creep up my spine. I did a quick search for flights. Another $600, plus the exchange rate, plus food, plus the outfits. I was looking at a $2,500 weekend. I called Betsy. Hey, Bets. Got the bachelorette email. It looks incredible. Right? It's going to be epic, she chirped. It is. It's just a little more than I was expecting. Vegas is a big trip. There was a pause on the other end. Her voice when it came back was a few degrees cooler. Liz, this is my bachelorette party. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You had one for your first... The words were out before I could stop them. I immediately regretted it. That was a potluck and a bar crawl in her hometown, she snapped. This is different. Mark and I are in a better place financially. We want to do things right. Asterisk, you are times I thought. Asterisk, I'm not. Asterisk. But I couldn't say it. I didn't want to be times that times person, the one who ruins the fun. Okay, I said, my voice small. Yeah, okay. It'll be great. I hung up and transferred money from my savings account, the one I'd been carefully building for a down payment. So much for that. The hits kept coming. There was the engagement party for which we were all expected to chip in for the catering. Then came the bridal shower hosted by her fiancé's mother, where the invitation included a link to a wishing well for cash gifts. My calendar was filling up with expensive mandatory fun. Then came the registry. The email read, "Your presence is the only present we need, but if you insist on spoiling us, we've put together a small list of items to help us start our new life." I clicked the link. Small was not the word I would have used. The page was a sea of designer kitchenware, high-tech gadgets, and luxury home goods. I scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. A silver-plated picture frame for $250. A set of 6 wine glasses for $400. A robotic vacuum for $900. I sorted the list by price low to high just to see what the entry point was. The cheapest item was a single artisanal French cheese knife. It cost $165. I laughed. It was a hollow, empty sound. This wasn't a wedding. It was a shakedown. A beautifully curated pastel-themed shakedown. I started hearing murmurs from the other side. Mark's groomsmen were complaining too. His brother, the best man, apparently had a huge fight with him about the cost of the bachelor party, a golf weekend at Pebble Beach. Even my aunt called me, whispering, "Did you see this registry, Elizabeth? $165 for a cheese knife? Does it cut the cheese by itself?" The stress was mounting. The wedding was still 4 months away, and I was already thousands of dollars in the hole. I felt trapped. Every time I thought about backing out, the image of those blurry photos from her first wedding flashed in my mind. I couldn't miss this one. I couldn't let her down again. Last night, I was sitting on my couch staring at my credit card statement when my phone chimed with an email notification from Betsy. The subject line was, in all caps, "Surrounded by star emojis. Asterisk. Asterisk. Big news and a very important update. Asterisk. I brace myself. What now? A mandatory pre-wedding spa day. A destination dress fitting. I took a deep breath and opened the email. My eyes scanned the first few lines of bubbly, exclamation point-filled text about love and new beginnings. Then I saw the sentence that made the air leave my lungs. After a lot of thought and a truly incredible offer, we just couldn't refuse. We've decided to move our celebration. Forget the local country club. We're going to the Caribbean. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. I didn't even flinch. I just stared at the wall, my heart hammering a frantic, furious rhythm against my ribs. The Caribbean. A second destination event. She had to be joking. I snatched the phone back up my thumb, jabbing at her contact name. It rang twice before she answered her voice, syrupy with manufactured excitement. Liz, did you see? Can you believe it? Betsy, what the hell is this? The syrup vanished. Excuse me, it's our wedding. We're excited and we wanted to share the news. The news. You just added another $2,000 to everyone's bill, at least. We all agreed to a local wedding, Betsy. That was the plan. Plans change, Liz, she said, her voice tight and defensive. Mark got a fantastic deal through his company. It's a gorgeous, all-inclusive resort. It's practically a vacation for everyone. A vacation we didn't ask for and can't afford. My own voice was rising, a tremor of pure rage running through it. The $500 dress, the Vegas trip, the registry where the cheapest thing is a cheese knife. And now this. Do you have any idea what you're asking of people? I'm asking them to celebrate my marriage, she shot back. I'm sorry if my happiness is in times inconvenience times for you. Your happiness is costing me my down payment on a house. The words exploded out of me raw and unfiltered. I'm thousands of dollars in debt for your simple local wedding. I can't do this, Bets. Nobody can. There was a brittle silence on the line. I could hear her breathing sharp and shallow. When she finally spoke, her voice was laced with a cold, dismissive pity that was worse than the yelling. You just don't get it, do you? She said softly. You've never been married. You don't understand what it takes to plan a truly special day, what it means. This is my one day to feel like a princess, and you're trying to ruin it by complaining about money. The air went out of my lungs. It was such a low blow, so perfectly crafted to wound me, that I couldn't even form a response. My single status, the quiet life I'd built for myself after years in the service, was now a weapon she was using to paint me as ignorant and bitter. This has nothing to do with me being married or not. I finally managed my voice dangerously quiet. This is about you treating your friends and family like human ATMs. If you can't afford it, Liz, maybe you should just say so, she snapped. Maybe you shouldn't be a bridesmaid after all. The threat hung in the air between us, ugly and absolute. Click. She hung up. I stood in the middle of my living room, phone in hand, shaking. My screen lit up. A private message from Sarah. Asterisk. She hung up on you too, didn't she? Asterisk. Another one from a number I didn't recognize. Asterisk. Hey, this has been Mark's best man. He gave me your number. Are we all getting financially fleeced? Or am I crazy? The guys are about to stage a mutiny over this Caribbean bullshit. Asterisk. The relief that washed over me was so intense my knees felt weak. I wasn't alone. I wasn't the bitter, unmarried sister trying to ruin everything. I was just one of the many people being bled dry by the bride and groom. The Betsy's Bridal Brigade group chat remained ominously silent for a full day. Then a new message from Betsy appeared. It was a screenshot of flight deals to Street Lucia, followed by a link to the resort's booking page. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the insane cost increase. Just a chipper message times. Let's get these rooms booked, ladies. Only 12 weeks to go. Can't wait to have my best girls by my side times, followed by a string of heart emojis. It was a power move. A dare. She was calling our bluff, knowing how hard it would be for any of us to detonate a friendship or a family relationship over this. Maria and Chloe replied with enthusiastic gifs. Sarah sent a non-committal. Looks beautiful. I stared at the message, the unspoken ultimatum, clear, get on board or get out. The image of those blurry photos from her first wedding swam in my head. The ghost of my past failure. If I backed out now, I'd be the villain of the story for the rest of our lives. The jealous sister who couldn't handle her happiness. The one who made it all about money. But if I stayed in, I'd be rewarding her. I'd be validating this monstrous entitled behavior and bankrupting myself in the process. I felt trapped, backed into a corner she had expertly constructed. For 2 days, I didn't reply. I let the silence hang there, my own little protest. On the third day, I made my decision. I wasn't going to let her win, but I wasn't going to let her push me out either. I was going to finish this on my own terms. I booked the cheapest flight I could find, one with 2 layovers, and a middle seat at the back of the plane. I RSVP'd yes to the resort. I posted a single sterile thumbs up emoji in the group chat. Then, I opened a new tab on my browser and navigated to a registry. The page loaded a monument to her greed. The $900 vacuum, the $400 wine glasses, the endless parade of overpriced homewares. I sorted the list by price low to high. There it was at the very top. The cheapest item. The entry fee to her new life. The artisanal French cheese knife. $165. I looked at the absurdly ornate silver handle, the ridiculous curve of the blade. A tool for a life I couldn't fathom, bought with money I didn't have for a sister I no longer recognized. It was the perfect symbol for the whole charade. A shakedown disguised as a celebration. A slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a happy one. It was the smile of a soldier who has chosen her weapon. I added it to my cart. I typed in my credit card number. The number's already seared into my brain from the dress and the Vegas trip. For the gift message, I kept it simple. Congratulations. Can't wait to celebrate with you. I clicked purchase. And for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of control. She would get her bridesmaid. She would get her Caribbean wedding. And she would get her goddamn cheese knife. And when she opened it, I truly hoped, she would understand exactly what it meant.
Story teen.
The brochure felt heavier than it should, its glossy pages sticking slightly to my fingertips in the humid August air. On the cover, a celestial silver Toyota Camry gleamed under a perfect studio-lit sky. Inside, I'd circled the XSE trim package. Red leather interior. Panoramic glass roof. The works. For 17 years, I'd been a master of practicality. Sensible shoes, used cars, coupons clipped and filed in a worn-out accordion folder. Now, I was about to do something wonderfully, gloriously impractical. I'd earned it. I'd earned it, pulling 1 2-hour shifts as an obstetric sonographer, my eyes burning from staring at grainy black and white screens, searching for the flutter of a new heart. I'd earned it through night classes at community college with my son Liam, then just a toddler asleep in his car seat in the back of the lecture hall. I'd climbed my way from a cramped apartment that always smelled of my neighbor's curry to this quiet little house with a garden I mostly killed but loved anyway. This car wasn't just a car. It was a trophy. It was proof. It was for Liam. My brilliant, funny, hardworking Liam, who was about to start his senior year. He'd never once complained about our sputtering 2012 Honda Civic. He just smiled, thanked me for the ride, and never asked for a thing. He deserved this. My ex Kevin had also been handed a trophy once, a full-ride athletic scholarship to a D1 school. He'd taken that trophy and pawned it for poker chips and cheap beer. He dropped out after 2 semesters, racking up a mountain of gambling debt that followed him like a stray dog. Now at 33, he was living in his parents' basement, bouncing between stocking shelves at Target and ringing up PBR at the local gas station. He didn't even have a car. I hadn't seen him in months, which was pretty standard. He'd text Liam on his birthday, maybe throw $20 in a card at Christmas, but that was the extent of his fatherly duties. The person I did talk to, surprisingly, was his sister Chloe. We'd managed to stitch together a functional, friendly relationship over the years for Liam's sake. She was his aunt, after all. She sent him gift cards, came to his soccer games, and always asked how he was doing in school. So, when my phone buzzed with her name, I answered with a genuine smile. "Hey you," I said, setting the Camry brochure on the kitchen counter. "Penny, how are you? How's my favorite nephew?" Her voice was always a little too loud, a little too cheerful, but it was usually a welcome dose of energy. "He's great. Just gearing up for senior year. You know, homecoming plans, college applications, the whole 9 yards." "Oh my God, I can't believe it. It feels like yesterday you were showing me his first ultrasound picture." I laughed. "Trust me, I know. That's actually why I'm so excited. I'm doing something huge for him, top secret." "Ooh, dish, I can keep a secret." I took a deep breath, the thrill of it bubbling up inside me. "Okay, but you can't say a word." "I'm buying him a car." "No way, a car. That's amazing." The Civic finally kicked the bucket. "Not yet, but it's on its last legs." "No, this is a real car. A new one. I'm surprising him with it before school starts. I'm getting him a 2024 Toyota Camry." Silence. Not the excited gasp for air kind of silence. It was a dead, heavy silence that sucked the air out of the room. I could hear the faint sound of a TV in her background. "Chloe?" I asked, my smile faltering. "You there?" A new car," she finally said, her voice stripped of its earlier cheer. "Like a brand new off-the-lot car." "Yeah. The XSE. It's his dream car. He's obsessed with it." "Wow," she breathed. But it wasn't a happy wow. It was a shocked, wind knocked out of you wow. "Penny, that's a lot." "It is," I agreed, my pride puffing my chest out. "I've been saving for over a year. He's earned it." "I'm sure he has," she said slowly, cautiously. "It's just... Have you thought about what this will do to Kevin?" I blinked. The question was so far out of left field I almost laughed. "What does Kevin have to do with this?" "Well, think about it," she said, her tone shifting from cautious to condescending like she was explaining something to a child. "Your son, his son, gets a brand new $34,000 car. And his dad can't even afford a bus pass half the time. He's carless, Penny. He's 33 and he has nothing. This will absolutely crush him." The thrill I'd been feeling curdled into a hot, tight knot in my stomach. "Chloe, with all due respect, managing Kevin's feelings is not my responsibility. It hasn't been for a very long time. This is about Liam. But at times is times about Kevin. How is he supposed to feel like a father? When you're pulling stunts like this, you're making him look like a deadbeat." "He times is times a deadbeat," I snapped the words out before I could stop them. "He made his choices. He chose gambling over his scholarship. He chose video games in his parents' basement over getting a real career. I chose our son. Every single time. I worked for this. Liam deserves this. End of story." "It's not the end of story," she shot back, her voice rising. "You're doing this times to times him. I know you are. It's a power move. You're rubbing his face in your success and his failure." I was floored. I stood there in my kitchen, the glossy photo of the silver Camry seeming to mock me from the counter. All the joy, all the pride I'd felt just moments before was gone, replaced by a furious, buzzing indignation. "You are unbelievable," I said, my voice low and shaking. "This has nothing to do with you or your brother. This is a gift for my son. I'm not going to apologize for being a good mother and providing for him." "Being a good mother doesn't mean you have to be a cruel ex," she retorted. "You could at least show a little compassion. Think about someone other than yourself for a second." I actually did laugh then, a bitter, humorless sound. "I have to go, Chloe." "No, wait, Penny, just think about it," she pleaded, a note of desperation creeping in. "Just hold off for a few days. Let me talk to him. Maybe we can figure something out." "Figure what out?" I demanded. "There is nothing to figure out. I am buying my son a car. Goodbye." I hung up before she could say another word, my thumb jabbing the screen with more force than necessary. My heart was pounding in my ears. I stared at the phone, half expecting her to call right back. For a few minutes, there was only silence. A deep, unsettling quiet that felt like the air holding its breath before a storm. The quiet lasted for 2 days. 2 days of me second-guessing my own excitement, 2 days of a low-grade anger simmering under my skin. Then on Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed again. "Chloe." I let it go to voicemail, but she immediately called back. And again. On the third try, I sighed and answered, putting her on speaker. "I have a solution," she announced, skipping any preamble. "It's an amazing compromise, Penny. I talked to Kevin." My blood ran cold. "You told him?" It wasn't a question. Of course I told him. How else were we supposed to figure this out? He was upset, obviously, but he understands. He wants to be a part of this. For Liam? I waited, my fingers drumming a silent, furious rhythm on the counter. "Go on." "Okay," she said, taking a deep, theatrical breath. "So Kevin has been saving up. He's going to contribute $80 to the car." I stared at the phone. I must have misheard. 80. Yes. And I'm going to match it. So that's $160 total. From his side of the family. She said it with such magnanimous pride, as if she were announcing a multi-million-dollar endowment. I was so stunned I couldn't even form a word. So she continued barreling into the silence. "The plan is, you buy the car, we give you the cash, and you tell Liam it's a joint gift. From his mom, times and times his dad. That way Kevin feels included, he doesn't look like a total failure, and he can use this to get closer to Liam. Isn't that great?" The silence stretched. It was the sound of 17 years of single motherhood, of scraped knees and late-night fevers of parent-teacher conferences, attended alone, and birthday parties paid for on a credit card, all crashing down into one single, crystallized moment of absolute audacity. I picked up the phone, my voice flat and cold as ice. "No thanks, Chloe. I have it covered." I hung up. The phone rang again instantly. I ignored it. A text message notification lit up the screen. Asterisk, Chloe. Are you kidding me? Asterisk. Another one? Asterisk. Chloe, I'm trying to help my brother be a father, and you're shutting him down, asterisk. The phone rang again. I silenced it, but the text kept coming, a rapid-fire assault. Asterisk, Chloe, you are the most selfish idiot I have ever met. Asterisk. Asterisk, Chloe. It's $160. You won't even let him do that much for his own son. Asterisk. Asterisk, Chloe, you are doing this just to hurt him. I knew it. Asterisk. The phone rang a fourth time. This time I answered my patience, completely gone. What I snapped. You have two choices, she shrieked, her voice cracking with fury. Either you let Kevin chip in and take credit for the car, or you don't buy the car at all. You will not humiliate my brother like this. An ultimatum. She was giving me an ultimatum about a gift I'd saved for a gift for my son, a gift that had absolutely nothing to do with her or the 33-year-old man-child living in her parents' basement. I was no longer just angry, I was baffled. I felt like I'd been dropped into a different dimension, where I was responsible for the fragile ego of the man who chose a poker table over his own family, where my success was a weapon and my son's happiness was collateral damage. Let me make sure I understand, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You want me to either lie to my son about a $34,000 gift or cancel it entirely to protect the feelings of your deadbeat brother. He's not a deadbeat, he's just had a hard time. Goodbye, Chloe. I hung up and immediately blocked her number. Then I blocked Kevin's. Then, just to be thorough, I blocked their mothers. I sat in the ringing silence of my kitchen, my hands shaking. The joy was gone. They had tainted it, smeared their grubby entitled fingerprints all over my beautiful, perfect plan. For about an hour, I let myself fume. I paced. I cursed them both out loud to my empty house. I almost considered calling the whole thing off, just trading in the Civic for a slightly less old Civic. Let them win. Let them keep their pathetic pride intact. Then I looked at the brochure on the counter. The gleaming silver car. The red leather. I thought of Liam's face. I thought of every single sacrifice, every long shift, every lonely night I had pushed through to get to this moment. And I thought times. Oh, hell no. Asterisk. My rage cooled and hardened into something sharp and clear. An idea bloomed in my mind, a perfect, petty, and deeply satisfying idea. I unblocked Chloe's number. My thumbs flew across the screen. Asterisk. Me. You know what? You're right. I was being selfish. I will accept Kevin's contribution. Asterisk. Her reply was almost instantaneous. Asterisk. Chloe, I'm so glad you're seeing reason. This is what's best for Liam. Asterisk. I smiled, a real sharp-edged smile. I opened the Venmo app. I typed in Chloe's username, the one I used to send Liam gift money from her. I hit the request button. Amount? $160. For 0.47% of Liam's 2024 Toyota Camry. Per our agreement, I hit send. Then I blocked her number again for good this time. The next morning, I walked into the Toyota dealership alone. The air smelled of new rubber and clean plastic. I found the silver XSE from the brochure sitting on the showroom floor, its paint job so pristine it looked wet. I ran my hand over the cool metal of the hood. This was mine. I did this. An hour later, I was sitting in the driver's seat, the red leather soft beneath me. I gripped the steering wheel, the keys, a heavy, solid weight of accomplishment in my hand. I hadn't just bought a car. I had bought my freedom from their drama. I had refused to let a deadbeat's pathetic insecurity dictate my son's happiness. I had paid in full, and my name was the only one on the title. I backed the car out of the spot, the engine a low, satisfying hum. I was going to get the biggest, reddest bow I could find. And when Liam saw this car, his car, the story he would hear would be the truth, that it came from his mother, who loved him, who worked hard for him, and who would never ever let anyone else take credit for it.
Story 11.
The number was $23,450. I stared at the bank balance on my phone, the green digits glowing in the dark of our bedroom. Beside me, Sarah did the same on her own screen, as if cross-referencing reality. We did it, she whispered, her voice thick, with a relief so heavy it felt like it had weight. One last shot, I said, wrapping my arm around her. Our son Leo was asleep down the hall. He was 4 years old, and the living, breathing, screaming embodiment of our first successful IVF cycle. He was our miracle. But getting him was brutal. The debt, the daily injections, Sarah had to endure the emotional roller coaster that felt less like a ride and more like being thrown from a moving train. We swore we'd never do it again. But then Leo started asking for a brother. Then a sister. Then just someone. And we saw the look in his eyes, this little flicker of loneliness that no amount of parental attention could fill. So we started saving. Every extra shift, I picked up every freelance design project Sarah took on after putting Leo to bed. For 2 years, we funneled it all into an account we nicknamed the Sibling Fund. Now it was full. 23 grand. Enough for one more round. One more roll of the dice. No do-overs. This was it. We didn't tell anyone. Not our parents, not our friends. Especially not my sister Chloe. Of course she found out anyway. My phone rang 2 days later. The caller ID flashed Chloe. I almost let it go to voicemail. You have to pick it up, Sarah said, not looking up from the Lego castle she was building with Leo. You know, she'll just call Mom if you don't. She was right. I sighed and hit the green button. Hey, Chloe. What's up? Don't what's up me, John. Her voice was already tight, stretched thin. Mom told me you're going for another one. I pinched the bridge of my nose. So much for keeping it quiet. We're thinking about it. We just got the money together. The money, she repeated the words, dripping with something bitter. Right. The money. I could hear her pacing, the sound of her slippers scuffing against a hardwood floor. So you're really going to do it? You're going to have another kid when you already have one. That's the plan, I said carefully. We want Leo to have a sibling. A sibling, she scoffed. A humorless grating sound. And what about me, John? What about your sister? Here we go. Chloe and her husband Mark have been trying for years. They'd run into fertility issues of their own, but their situation was complicated. Mark had a 12-year-old son, Ethan, from his first marriage. Chloe treated Ethan less like a stepson and more like a piece of furniture she hadn't chosen. Their house was a constant storm of arguments, slammed doors, and tense, miserable silences. They'd looked into IVF, but Chloe said they couldn't afford it. I suspected it had more to do with their chaotic life than their bank account. Chloe, this has nothing to do with you, I said, trying to keep my voice even. The hell it doesn't, she snapped. You have a son. You have a perfect little family. I have times nothing asterisk. I have Mark's Brad who looks at me like I'm a stranger in his house. It's my turn. It's not about turns, Chloe. It doesn't work like that. It should, she insisted. Her voice dropped, taking on a tone that was somehow both wheedling and demanding. You and Sarah should give me the money. I actually laughed. A short, sharp bark of disbelief. You're kidding, right? Do I sound like I'm kidding? You don't need it. Not really. You have Leo. You've experienced it all. Motherhood. I haven't. You're being selfish, John. You have what I want and you're just hoarding it. The sheer breathtaking entitlement of it all left me speechless for a second. She didn't ask. She declared. As if our sacrifice, our years of saving and scraping, was a resource she was owed. No, I said. The word was flat. Final. Absolutely not. Why, she wailed, the anger instantly replaced by a wounded theatrical sorrow. Why are you always like this? Why do you get everything and I get nothing? We're not giving you the money, Chloe. It's for our family. For our potential child. End of discussion. You're denying me a child, she shrieked. That's what you're doing. You're choosing to have a second baby over me, having my first. You have Ethan, I started, but she cut me off. He's not mine. The venom in her voice was chilling. He will never be mine. He looks like his mother. I had nothing to say to that. The cruelty was just too raw. This conversation is over, I said, and I hung up before she could say another word. I looked over at Sarah. She'd stopped playing with the Legos, her hand hovering over a blue brick. She'd heard everything. Her face was pale. I can't believe her, she whispered. Believe it, I said, slumping onto the sofa. That's my sister. The next 2 weeks were a low-grade war. Chloe tried to turn the family against us. She called our parents, spinning a sob story about her barren life and our callous selfishness. My mom called me just to hear your side of things. My dad told me Chloe was in a fragile state. We held firm. We told them the money was non-negotiable. It wasn't a family loan. It was the future of our family. Eventually, the calls tapered off. Chloe sent a final blistering text message that called me a heartless monster and Sarah a name I won't repeat. Then silence. A cold, heavy silence that lasted for months. During that time, we went ahead. The appointments started. The schedules, the hormone charts taped to the fridge. Sarah started the injections again, pressing the needle into her stomach each night with a grim determination I both admired and hated. We were a team locked in our own private battle, the world outside fading away. We didn't talk about Chloe. We didn't talk about anything but the next step, the next blood test, the next milestone. Then came the call. The one from the clinic. The 2-week wait was over. I held Sarah's hand so tight my knuckles were white as she answered the phone on speaker. Good news, Sarah, the nurse said, her voice impossibly cheerful. The test was positive. Congratulations. We didn't shout. We didn't even move. We just collapsed into each other. A silent, shuddering mess of tears and relief. It had worked. Against all odds, our one last shot had hit its mark. The next few months were a blur of cautious optimism. The first ultrasound showed a tiny flickering heartbeat. The second showed a gummy bear-shaped being that was impossibly our child. Sarah started to get her energy back. A tiny bump began to push against the fabric of her shirts. We were happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. The ugly fight with Chloe felt like a bad dream from another lifetime. We were in our bubble, and it was perfect. But you can't live in a bubble forever. My mom called to invite us to a big family dinner for my dad's 65th birthday. Everyone was going to be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. And Chloe. I don't know, Mom. I hesitated. Oh, come on, John, she coaxed. It's been months. This is for your father. Whatever happened with you and Chloe, just put it aside for one night. For him. Sarah and I talked about it for a long time that evening. Maybe it's for the best, she said, her hand resting on her stomach. We can't hide this forever. We're 12 weeks now. People are going to know soon anyway. Maybe this is the way to do it. Rip the Band-Aid off. Her logic made sense. Maybe enough time had passed. Maybe seeing our joy would make Chloe understand. Maybe, just maybe, she'd be happy for her only brother. Hope is a stubborn, stupid thing. The restaurant was loud, filled with the cheerful chaos of our extended family. Chloe and Mark were already there, sitting at the far end of the long table. She saw us walk in, and her face went blank. She gave a curt nod and immediately turned back to her conversation, a clear, unmistakable dismissal. The air between our ends of the table felt 10 degrees colder. We spent the next 2 hours making small talk, passing bread baskets, and helping Leo cut his chicken fingers. I kept glancing down the table. Chloe was drinking wine, her movements sharp and jerky. She laughed a little too loudly at one of Mark's jokes. She was avoiding my eyes, but I could feel her watching us. After the cake was cut and everyone sang a wobbly "Happy birthday" to my dad, he stood up and tapped his water glass with a fork. "Thank you all for coming," he said, beaming. "Having my whole family together like this, it's the best gift a man could ask for." He looked right at me. Speaking of which, I think John has a little something he'd like to share. It was my cue. Our cue. I squeezed Sarah's hand under the table. She squeezed back, a nervous tremor in her fingers. This was it. I stood up, pulling Sarah up with me. The chatter in the room died down as all eyes turned to us. I could see Chloe's face, a mask of forced indifference. Her wine glass paused halfway to her lips. I cleared my throat. "Thanks, Dad." "Well, Sarah and we have some news we're very excited to share with you all." I took a deep breath, a smile spreading across my face. "We're pregnant." The words hung in the air for a beat, followed by an explosion of sound. My aunts cheered, my cousins applauded, and my mom rushed over to hug Sarah, tears in her eyes. My dad clapped me on the back, his face split by a wide, proud grin. For a moment, a wave of pure, uncomplicated joy washed over me. It felt perfect. Then I heard a single sharp sound cutting through the warmth. A scoff. It came from Chloe's end of the table. Well, she said, her voice loud enough to carry. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her wine. "Must be nice." The chatter faltered. My mom shot her a warning look. "Chloe," what she said, shrugging with theatrical innocence. "It must be. To just want another one and get it." "No problem." I felt Sarah stiffen beside me. "It wasn't no problem." "Chloe," Sarah said, her voice quiet but firm. Chloe's eyes, glassy from the wine, narrowed on her. "Oh, right. I forgot. You had to save up all that money. Money you could have used for something else. Or given to someone else." That was it. The line. My dad opened his mouth to intervene, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I said, my voice low. "Don't do this here, Chloe. Not tonight." "Why not?" She pushed her chair back and stood up, the legs scraping against the floor. Every head in the restaurant's private room turned toward us. "This is a family dinner, isn't it? For sharing things, you shared your good news. Now I'm sharing my feelings about it." Her husband Mark muttered her name, trying to pull her back down, but she shook him off. "You're selfish," she spat, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Both of you. You already have one. You have the whole perfect family package, a beautiful son. But it wasn't enough. You had to have another. You had to hoard the happiness." "Hoard it?" I asked, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "We worked for 2 years for this baby, Chloe. This isn't a pie where you getting a slice means I get less. But it is, she shrieked, her face contorting. It was literally a pie. It was $23,000 that you could have given me. You could have given me a chance at motherhood. But you chose to deny me that. We didn't deny you anything. That was our money for our child. And what about me? What about what I deserve? She raged. Mark stood up, grabbing her arm more firmly this time. Across the table, his son Ethan, all of 12 years old, had shrunk into his chair, his face white. He was staring at his plate, trying to become invisible. You have a family, Chloe, I said, gesturing towards Mark and Ethan. You have a child in your life. It was the worst thing I could have said. Her head snapped toward Ethan, and the look on her face was pure poison. He is not my son, she screamed. The whole room went dead silent. Ethan flinched as if he'd been struck. He is not mine. I am a glorified babysitter to someone else's kid who looks at me with his mother's eyes. I wanted my own a real one. And you took that from me. Mark finally wrenched her back. Chloe, that's enough. We're leaving. No. She tore her arm away. He did this on purpose. He announced it here in front of everyone just to humiliate me. To show everyone how he has everything and I have nothing. You always hold it against me, don't you, John? You think just because my life isn't as neat and tidy as yours, just because my house is a mess, that I don't deserve what you have. I stared at her, at the wreckage she was making of my father's birthday, of our family, of that poor kid cowering at the table. The joy from moments ago was a distant memory, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. No, Chloe, I said, my voice dropping, all the anger gone, leaving something heavier in its place. I don't think you don't deserve a child. I think a child doesn't deserve you. The slap of my words was more powerful than a physical blow. She gasped, her mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. Mark's face was a stony mask of fury and shame. But my eyes were on Ethan. He slowly lifted his head and looked at me, and for the first time all night, I saw something other than fear in his expression. It was a flicker of something else. Acknowledgement. Chloe found her voice. You bastard, she whispered. We're done, I said to her. Then I looked at my parents. I'm sorry, Dad. Happy birthday. I took Sarah's hand. Let's go. We walked out, leaving a crater of silence behind us. As the restaurant door swung shut, I heard Chloe's voice rise one last time. You're an idiot, John. An absolute idiot for fighting with me in public. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. The car ride home was completely silent. The streetlights painted stripes across the windshield, hypnotic and meaningless. Sarah had her hand on her stomach, a protective gesture. I gripped the steering wheel, replaying the scene in my head. Her screaming. Ethan's face. My final brutal words. Had I done the right thing? Had I gone too far? She had pushed and pushed until she got the reaction she wanted, a public spectacle where she could be the victim. She called me an idiot for engaging, and maybe she was right. Maybe I should have just sat there and taken it for the sake of peace for my dad. But when I thought of Ethan, of the venom she'd spit in his direction, without a second thought, I knew I couldn't have. Peace at that price wasn't peace. It was just surrender. Sarah finally broke the silence, her voice soft. You defended our baby John. I glanced at her. Her eyes were fixed on the road ahead, but she reached over and put her hand on my arm. And you defended Ethan, she added. She's the one who ruined tonight. Not you. I nodded, but the knot in my stomach remained. The relationship with my sister wasn't just shattered. It was annihilated. We'd salted the earth. There was no coming back from this. I had chosen my new child over her feelings, and I'd do it again. But the cost felt immense, a permanent fracture in the foundation of my life. She wanted me to feel like the monster. In the quiet of the car with my wife and my unborn child safe beside me, I wondered if in her story I finally was.